The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am the Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, it's official. Adam Peters. And I thought something was interesting today. We moved away from head of football operations today when Josh Harris introduced him to the media and the fans that were watching all around the world. He introduced him as the general manager of the Washington Commanders, not the head of football operations as it had been termed as the process was taking place. So I think what we've gathered there, and I told you it was all semantics, right? He's the general manager. When we were doing the football, head of football operations thing, it was all semantics. He's the general manager. He's going to run the entire football side of the operation. And I think by him getting that official title, it means that Martin Mayhew has been removed from that particular position. Now, again, there'll be some rearranging of furniture. Some guys will be ousted altogether. I tweeted this out. I don't know if I've actually had this conversation with you guys. First of all, what a glorious weekend it was, right? Let me just start by saying that. I just dived in as if we didn't just witness some excellent football over the weekend, in particular, 2 games, right? One on Sunday, one on Monday night. That was just outstanding. And as a fan in a division that has a storied history where we talk a lot of shit to one another and want to see nothing but the absolute worst for every other team in the division, not us, that was fan-effing-tastic now, wasn't it? And, you know, it's not often that I get to say this, or you or any of us as fans get to say this, but we might have the most stable situation heading into the offseason. How is it possible that we have now a new GM, we need and are still looking for a new head coach that will have to then fill out his staff, and yet, we might have the most stable situation heading into the 2024 season. Now, again, the Giants aren't going to fire their head coach. Their GM is going to be intact, so there will be no changes there, but they are looking for a new defensive coordinator. There is a rumor out there that the Giants head coach, Brian Daboll, is a bit of a hothead and you know, isn't the easiest to get along with. Hence, his defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, no longer there. People talk in this business. And we all saw the fit that he threw. He threw a temper tantrum on a Monday night against Seattle when Daniel Jones made the wrong read. And it was a terrible read. And the guy was wide open for a touchdown. And instead, he throws a 97-yard pick six. He was clearly visibly upset. But he threw the tablet. Like, you can't throw the tablet in the direction of your quarterback. Like, he didn't throw it at him. He threw the shit on the bench, like, right next to him. You can't do that. I don't care how frustrated you are as a head coach. You have to keep your composure. You'd be pissed off behind closed doors, but you can't show that on the cameras. And so he might be, in his mannerisms on the sideline show that he's a guy that wears his emotions on his sleeve. Anyway, I said all that to say this. We might have the most stable situation in the division. Cowboys are going to fire probably everybody in the building. Eagles are definitely going to make some changes, whether it's to the head coach, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinators with an S, et cetera, et cetera. There are going to be changes made. We're just sitting back, kicking back. Yeah, this is nice. Anyway, back to us, though. I've had enough of that. I lied. You can't get enough of what we watched over the weekend. That's just good stuff. That's great theater. But back to us. That's what's most important. The introductory press conference of the new general manager, Adam Peters, he, along with the owner of this team, Josh Harris, sat down, and the majority owner, Josh Harris, sat down and fielded questions from the media. This was roughly a 20-minute roughly 21 minutes of a press conference. The first, as you would expect, 5 to 7 minutes spent introducing him and then him thanking everyone, shout out to his wife and kids and mom and dad and all the coaches and all of the different stops that I've had and the people that have impacted me, et cetera, et cetera. You expect that. And then once all of those pleasantries were out of the way, you get to the brass tacks of things. You open the floor to the media. The first question was a big one for me because I knew this was going to be asked, and I wanted to really, because look, I don't know what you were looking to gain from this presser. I don't know what your aim was, what you thought you were going to hear. He wasn't going to tell you anything about the second overall pick. He wasn't going to tell you anything about the roster right now or how he feels about it. He wasn't going to tell you anything about the coaching search in particular. Everything was going to be bland because it has to be. Nothing's done yet. He's the first piece of the offseason, and I think the most important piece. But he was the first piece of the offseason. There's still so many things that have to take place, including finding the guy that, as he said, at least, and so, you know, with these pressers, we get buzzwords, right? His buzzword was aligned. We're going to talk about that word, that phrase in particular, because he talked about it quite a bit. But it is so important. It's something that we've lacked here for the better part of 25 years, a quarter of a century, right? We haven't had any alignment between the top of the building, the next step down, the head coach, and the staff. We've never been in synchronicity from top to bottom. That's why you don't have any sustained winning. That's why you don't have a season where you've won more than 10 games since 1991, because there is no continuity. There is no alignment, right? So we'll talk about some of the buzzwords we heard today. But the first thing that he was asked, and I think it was Nikki Javala that got the first question off. And I think he recognized her because, remember, his stops in the NFL include New England. Then it was Denver, and then it was San Francisco, which is where John Lynch pulled him from, was Denver. And that was the first hire that Lynch made when he came on board, was Adam Peters. So he's been a winner every step of the way. He's won a Super Bowl everywhere except San Francisco, and that could still happen should they win the Super Bowl this year, right? But with that said, he recognized Nikki from his time in Denver, and he pretty much told her, look, this was a job that I coveted. And he went on about the fan base, the storied history, all the shit that we always hear when someone comes here that you're supposed to say. You know, if you want to get into the good graces of the fan base and the people that are going to be supporting you, you reach back into the history, into the time machine, and you talk about how rich of a tradition that this organization has, and how, you know, it's what once was a storied franchise, and we're looking to restore that history, that proud feeling that fans used to have in being a fan of this team. We're looking to restore that. We're looking to restore winning here and have this take its rightful place as an elite franchise in the NFL. Yeah, that's what I'm expecting. That's what he said. That's what he's supposed to say. That's what everybody says that comes here. No different. That's what we want. This is actually the first time, however, that we feel like there's a chance that it could actually take place. This isn't just lip service from Ronald Rivera with Daniel Snyder still hanging over his head. That's not lip service from Mike Shanahan with both Kyle or excuse me, Bruce and Dan hanging over his head. That's not Jay Gruden coming here, lovable, laughable Jay coming here and wanting to restore tradition and still having Bruce and Dan over his head. That's not Joe Gibbs 2.0 coming here and having the laughing hyena himself, Vinny Serrato, and Dan hanging over his head, right? And poor Joe kept coming in here and really not knowing how free agency or any of that stuff works. He was like a kid in a candy store. And then the adults in the room that were supposed to be the adults, actually, that weren't adults, weren't going to tell him, no, you shouldn't do that. Yeah. Go ahead, Joe. Let's do it. Right? Let's trade a second round pick for TJ Duckett so the Eagles don't get him. I mean, how stupid could you be, right? But that's what happens when you're not aligned, when you don't have adults in the building, and there is no collaboration. People are making individual decisions off on their own and then telling other members of the organization. Remember when Bruce Allen's dumbass traded for Alex Smith and told Doug Williams, turn your phone off, don't answer anything, and kept him and everybody else in the organization, essentially, other than Dan Snyder, in the dark? Jay Gruden, his head coach, didn't even know he was trading for Alex Smith. They just showed up, surprise, look what we got. And Jay's like, is that Alex Smith? They're like, yeah, aren't you excited? We got your quarterback. And he's like, yeah, I would have rather just kept Kirk if you were going to do this shit. I mean, I don't have a choice. I don't have to say so in the matter. I guess I'm excited. Well, welcome to Washington, Alex. Good to have you, man. Right? Like, there was no collaboration. There was no alignment. It was just guys individually doing their own shit. So hearing him come in, say that, hey, this is the place I want to be. I want to restore the passion that the fans have. This is a great fan base, et cetera, et cetera. That the DMV area is a great place to be, and this storied franchise and history, all of that good stuff. I expected him to say that. I don't know what you guys were expecting from him in this opening presser. There was really nothing that he was going to say today that was going to move the needle all that much. It's just about him establishing who he is, what his beliefs are, and then let's go to work. That's what it's all about. Let's go to work, right? So another question that I think a lot of people started to talk about on socials, I saw this, was the long pause he had when asked, and it was probably the longest pause of the entire press conference. I will admit that, when he was asked about the current roster. And he knew he was going to be asked about it. It wasn't like he got bombarded with this and it was a surprise to him. He didn't know when it was going to come, and he wanted to be measured in how he answered the question. You don't want to offend players that are here, but he said in so many words, after a considerable pause, it was the longest pause of the press conference, and you can see he was searching for the right words. You want to be diplomatic here. You don't want to come in, ruffle feathers, or say anything controversial in your first press conference. So you could tell he's being measured, but he was like, look, there's some cornerstone guys here. There's some pieces here that, we can definitely work. And I think as fans, we feel that way, right? It's not a lot of them. Okay. We made a list. Let's see if I still have this list around anywhere. I may not. Yeah. We made a list. And this list has been altered since we made this list. This list was made back in like week 10, 11, something like that. The list of players that we made, and we did this as a group in the comment section, was Howell, Terry, Dotson, B-Rob, Allen, Payne, Tress Way, Cosme, and Jamin Davis. That was the list. Howell is not a part of the future in terms of starting, I don't think, at this point. Allen, to me, is a commodity that you should explore trading this offseason. I would definitely look to move him if the right opportunity came about. I'm not taking anything less than a second-round pick for Jonathan Allen, and if there's an opportunity to throw him in a deal that let's say Chicago is willing to move off of one, and we're going to talk about that. I got some, more to talk about there to add to that conversation tonight, so we'll do that. If John Allen is a sweetener in that deal that gets it done, absolutely. I'd look to potentially move Jonathan Allen this offseason if I were the organization. And then like Tress Way's getting up there in age. I still think he can do his job at a high level. Punters, they're like fine wine. A lot of times they age well, but at some point, probably going to look to, and again, you got to understand, Tress has been here through 3 different regimes, I think. If not 3, definitely 2, because Jay was here for a long time. And I think Tress got here with Jay. I don't think he was here with the Shanahans. So I think Tress got here with Jay, and that's a long time. He's the longest tenured, player on the team. He's been through, more than one regime. He's seen cultural shifts. He's seen ping pong tables in the locker room. He's seen them ripped out of the locker room. He's seen them be the Redskins, the football team, and now the Commanders. He's seen it all here. And the one thing that you have to remind yourself of is Adam Peters doesn't have anything to do with Tress Way. Didn't draft him, none of that stuff, no ties to him, just like Sam. A lot of you out there are caping for Sam and want to see him get an opportunity. I would love to see Sam get another opportunity, but at the end of the day, there's no ties to this next group to Sam. None, zero. Now, part of the reason why you don't make any, rush decisions and hasty decisions, and you don't, and if you're, Adam Peters, you don't say anything crazy, is because if you're talking about being in lockstep or aligned, as the phrase he used from San Francisco, if you're talking about being aligned and there being a collaboration, is another phrase that he used at least 2 or 3 times throughout his presser, then you got to then have that relationship with your head coach. That guy's not even here right now. So the next coach that you bring in could say, hey, I think we can fast track this thing. I really think I can fix Sam Howell. So let's pump the brakes on these quarterbacks. Now, hey, we're going to sit down. We're going to watch these quarterbacks. We're going to sit down. We're going to write down all the pros, all the cons, and we're going to get to the bottom of this thing, and we're going to figure out if there's a big difference between the guys coming out in the draft and Sam Howell. Because if there's not, I think I can fix this kid. I think I can work with him. I think I can get the best out of him. And if we can do that, there may be more value in this number 2 overall pick than us making a selection here, right? You just don't know what the next coach is going to come in here and say, and how receptive Adam Peters is going to be to that. The likelihood is part of the allure of this job was taking this job because of the number 2 overall pick, knowing you could draft your guy, right? And that's ultimately what I think is going to happen. As I said to Atlanta, 3 years ago, you don't know when you're going to be in this spot again, right? The goal is to never be this high in the draft because it means you suck. You never want to be this high unless you traded with someone and they sucked, but you have their pick, sort of like Chicago. And so you end up being this high in the draft, but you don't want to be this high because of your own doing. The Packers haven't had an issue at quarterback for almost 3 decades. They haven't drafted in the top 10 once for those quarterbacks. Traded for Brett Favre, drafted Aaron Rodgers in the mid-20s, drafted Jordan Love in the 20s. You don't have to get your quarterback in the top 5. It helps. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it doesn't, because it does. You look at the quarterbacks that are all left out of the 8 quarterbacks that are in the playoffs right now in the final 8. Of the 8, 7 are first-round picks. Brock Purdy being the one outlier, and he was Mr. Irrelevant. But the other 7 are first-round picks. Of those 7 that were first-round picks, see, Lamar and Jordan Love. Lamar was 32nd. Love was in the 20s. Mahomes was 10 on the dot. Let's see. Allen was top 10. We just go through it. 1, no. 2, top 10. 3, no. 3, top 10. Mahomes was 10 on the dot. 4 seed is eliminated. Nope. 4 seed is CJ Stroud, top 10. That's on the AFC side. On the NFC side, you've got Love out of the top 10. 1 seed out of the top 10. 2 seed, not in the playoffs. 3 seed, number 1 overall. So that's a top 10 pick. 4. And then they are playing the Bucks. Baker Mayfield 1 overall. 5. So of the 7 first round quarterbacks, 5 went in the top 10. And of the 5 that went in the top 10, Mayfield 1, Goff 1, CJ Stroud 2, 3 of them probably were top 3 picks. 1, 1, and 2. So, yeah, there's something to be said about getting a quarterback as high as you can possibly get them. Gives you a better shot to be successful, but it's not the end all be all, is what I'm essentially trying to convey to you. But when he talked about the cornerstones, I think he's talking about guys like Terry, Payne. I think Cosme is in that discussion coming off the year. Now we need to see consistency out of him. But he just came off of a massive year, and I was expecting that out of him. He's a guard. He's not a tackle. And I think he settled in nicely at right guard. And I think he could be one of the better right guards in all of football. So I think you're talking about Terry. I think you're talking about B-Rob potentially, right? I like the potential that I've seen out of him and what he can be for this offense and what he could be in an offense that I really think he could be very similar to what the Lions have in David Montgomery. Brian Robinson can be that for us, right? Like, I think that's what, when you start comparing what they have in Detroit, if that's the guy you're targeting, what items do we have here that that resemble what they have? And then what pieces are we missing that we can acquire via the draft? And I think there are pieces that are very similar already here. There are a lot of things that we don't have that we would have to acquire, you know. And again, you're not going to get everything in one offseason. So I think there are some, you know, some pieces here that you can build around, but they're not a lot. It's not a whole hell of a lot, right? So he did talk about that. And there were a lot of people that were reading into, you know, I'm a big body language guy. I'm a big, you know, clue guy from, you know, what physical clues you give. And that was one that you say, okay, he did pause there for a bit. But again, I think it was more about him being measured in what he wanted to say, not wanting to offend anyone. But he talked, you know, the most impactful quote, I wrote it down because I wanted to get this verbatim. For me, was the job itself. Why Washington? You know, Eric Bieniemy came here last year and said, "Why not Washington?" And that was something that we ran with. Why not us? Why can't we go 11-5? I fell for the banana in the tailpipe. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat you. I was all in on Eric Bieniemy last year, all in. And I was all in on Sam Howell and the two of them together and what they could do potentially. And obviously, it got off to a fast start, but it fizzled out very quickly. And we saw what we really truly had, specifically Eric Bieniemy, as the season wore on. I think Eagles fans saw Brian Johnson for what he is. You know, it took him a while to get there, but they saw what he was, and the exact same thing they watched last night, which is we can't handle the blitz. That's strictly on your coordinator. When a team is ill prepared for the blitz, I put that squarely and solely on the shoulders of the coaching staff, because there should be answers to the blitz. There should be answers. You shouldn't, as a quarterback, it'd be great if your quarterback could see the blitz and make adjustments at the line of scrimmage, but that shouldn't even be his priority. The coach should understand what the game plan is, what we're walking into, and have their quarterback armed with the necessary adjustments to take down that blitz, to make sure that this isn't something you think you can do for the duration of this game. And they clearly didn't have an answer. It's almost like their coordinator had never seen a blitz. Does that sound familiar to some of you? I don't know if it did or not, but it did for me. And I'm not going to lie, watching that was very satisfying and gratifying. However, it did open up a wound for me. It was like watching our season through the eyes of an Eagles fan and saying, that felt real familiar. But in any event, he said this about this opportunity in particular in Washington, and it's something that I know I spent a lot of time talking about when he first got the job, when it was reported that Washington did in fact agree to a deal with him. And we were all excited because for the first time in a long time, the best chose us and saw this as the best destination available, right? Forget that other opportunities may come along. And again, what is he supposed to say as he's being introduced as the team's new general manager? He's supposed to say this, but I still felt like his actions showed this as well, though. Quote, I told him I'm all in. And that was something else that he said multiple times. And I love to hear it, that he's all in. I mean, again, what else is he going to say? I'm halfway in. No, he's all in, of course. But he said, that made it easy for me to pass up other opportunities, which were great opportunities as well. But this was the best opportunity in the NFL, closed quote. The fact that he thought that this was the best opportunity available, and he said in the NFL, but he was really talking about of the available opportunities this offseason, and there were 4 for a GM. This was the best one. And remember, he turned down 2 opportunities last year. He did interview for the Giants 2 years ago when their vacancy when their GM spot was available and had a vacancy. Was in the final stages there, but obviously they went in a different direction. That resonated with me. It just hammered home the point that things have changed. And, you know, I think when you've been beaten up as badly as we have as a franchise, we need that positive reinforcement. I know I do sometimes need the positive reinforcement that, hey, we're back. And, like, you don't have to be so timid and so defensive all the time. Everything that has been said about us in the past usually was warranted. We would catch strays even when we didn't do anything wrong. But when you have the type of ownership that we had for as long as we had it, it was easy to be the punching bag. We were low-hanging fruit. And it would get old quick when we would get caught in the middle of something we had nothing to do with. But you know, when you have an organization that was being run the way that ours was being run for a quarter of a century, you get that reputation and it precedes you. And so to see that shift in just 1 year's time, again, this time last year, if these vacancies were available, there's no way we would attract a guy like Adam Peters here. Even if you knew that there was still an ongoing transfer of ownership from Snyder to this group that has taken over, you still couldn't have attracted an Adam Peters. 2 years ago, you definitely couldn't have attracted an Adam Peters here with Snyder still owning the team. You fast forward 1 year from the sale of the team, and we haven't even hit the 1 year anniversary quite yet. That won't happen for another 6 months or so. I mean, remember, he took over in July, literally right before training camp started. So to be having this conversation, I mean, 6 months in, essentially, since he's taken over the team, and have us be respected enough where the top GM candidate, who has been the top GM candidate and really could be selective, he could have gone back to San Francisco. He could have waited to see what other opportunities may have opened up. He could have explored the Chargers, explored the Raiders, explored the opportunities that were out there, Carolina. He could have explored. Or he could have just waited. He could have done nothing. The 49ers would have loved to have kept him another year, and he could have just waited to see what opens up next year. But he looked at this opportunity, and he said, that's the one that I want right there. I don't need to talk to these other teams. This is the one I want. And I know why I want it. And I said this on a show. I want to say it might have been last night. But one of the things that I think makes this a much more attractive job than, say, a Dallas or Philadelphia, and I'm just talking about from a head coach's standpoint, not from an Adam Peters standpoint. They don't have GM openings on those teams. But I'm just talking about from a head coaching standpoint. Like, if Dallas fires Mike McCarthy and the Eagles move on from Nick Sirianni before the window opens up? Could that change the way a guy like Ben Johnson feels about the openings? And is Washington still at the top of the list? I don't know, right? I still feel like we're still number one, and here's why. The expectation levels are different in Dallas and Philadelphia. Dallas just won 12 games 3 years in a row, and they're going to fire their head coach. That means you have incredible expectations walking through that door. Now, I've already said the reward for winning in Dallas is unlike any other. Whether you're a quarterback, a player, a coach, doesn't matter. You win in Dallas, and you will be forever immortalized. Tony Romo ain't win shit, and that man has all kinds of lucrative commercial and endorsement deals, and he went straight to the number one chair at CBS. Why? Because he was the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, and he had a little bit of success. He ain't win shit, but he's a household name, so it was easy for him to be marketable when his career was over. Look at Dak Prescott. What the hell has Dak Prescott won? Nothing but a bunch of regular season games. But that's good enough in Dallas, right? He's got all kinds of endorsement deals. Imagine what happens if you win as a coach there. They'd immortalize you, right? But guess what? Not winning there is not an option. And if you don't do it quickly, you could end up in the same boat with the same fate as Mike McCarthy. 12 wins 3 years in a row, and you're still fired. Look at Philadelphia. Nick Sirianni took them to the Super Bowl not 3 years ago, not 5 years ago, last year. Like literally, we're not even a year removed from the confetti falling on the field when they just came up 3 points short. We're not even at a year anniversary of that happening, and he could be fired. I don't think they're going to fire him, but it's on the table, and the fact that it is insane. So think about those two spots, and then think about Washington. You'll come in here. We want to win just as bad as any other organization out there, but understand if you won 12 games 3 years in a row here in Washington, even if it didn't come with any postseason success except one win, which is what Dallas has. 3 years in the postseason in a row, they've won one playoff game. Same could be said for the Eagles, really. 3 postseason seasons in a row, but they've only got 1 year where they succeeded and won 2 games, right? They had the number one seed, so they only had to play 2 games to get to the Super Bowl, and they won those 2 games. But in the other 2 years, the bookend years, they got bounced in the first round on the road at Tampa, both years. You imagine what we would do if we went to the playoffs 3 years in a row? We'd be so excited. Now, obviously, as you continue to win, the expectations change. But what I'm saying is you'd have an opportunity to grow into the role here in Washington, whereas you'd have immense pressure on you going to Dallas, going to Philadelphia, right out of the gate. You're expected to win, which is why I see veteran coaches going to those 2 spots if they were to open up, because those teams are ready to win now. You don't have time to wait for a young coach to figure it out. That's immense pressure. But again, I digress. I just think this is the best spot. This is the best opening. This is the best destination. We're hungry. We're starving for a winner. And you'll be greatly appreciated if you turn this thing around. Unlike Dallas or Philadelphia, they're not going to appreciate you if you win there but don't get it done in the postseason right away, I may add. Here, and I think he got to see that, he being Ben Johnson, not to go off track. And I'll bring it back full circle here in a second. But Ben Johnson got to see what it was like to take an organization that was downtrodden, rich history, fan base that's starving for a winner, but just needed a reason to believe. He saw what that looked like up close and personal with what they just did in Detroit. And there's not a better feeling in the world. I can tell you, watching the video that they had in the locker room after that game, how those fans were juiced and charged up. They talked about it in the locker room. Did you hear the crowd? Did you hear the fans? there's no better feeling than taking an organization and a fan base that's been a punching bag for so long and turning them into a winner. There's nothing like it. You can't replicate that. You can't manufacture that. That's real. That's what's going on in Detroit right now. You don't think Ben Johnson would like to recreate that, but be the guy at the top as the coach leading that team? And so I bring it full circle because one of the questions that was asked of Adam Peters, and we'll come back to the coach conversation a little bit later on in the program, is that he said that they're looking for the best leader. It's not necessarily offensive or defensive minded coach that they're looking for. They're looking for the best leader. And he's not lying. He didn't lie to us. I take him at face value when he says that. But I think his first inclination is to go after Ben Johnson and hope that he's the leader that he envisions him being. So here's why I'm adamant that they are going to hire an offensive-minded guy. Now, it may not come to fruition, right? And there are only two candidates that they're truly interested in from the offensive standpoint. You know the names. It's Ben Johnson and it's Bobby Slowik. Those are the only two that Washington's put in a request for. That's the only two that's on their list. The other 5 or 6 dudes are all defensive side of the football guys and candidates. Aaron Glenn and Ben McDonald and Mike McDonald and Raheem Morris and Luan Maruno. The list goes on and on and on of all the guys. Anthony Weaver, who they've already talked to in Baltimore with a Zoom interview. So it's all defensive guys. The list is long, and it's not many offensive guys on the list. But here's why I feel adamant that the coach that he's after is on the offensive side of football. While there's a long history for Adam Peters in the NFL, and that history extends all the way back to the New England Patriots when they first started winning. I think his first year in the league in the NFL was 2003. And so right away, he jumped in and experienced winning. I mean, they won the Super Bowl his first 2 years. He had to be thinking, this shit is easy. No, it's too easy, right? He got spoiled relatively quickly. But his roles on those teams, he learned a lot in that Patriots organization. He learned a lot going from there to Denver, experiencing another Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos. And I think their head coach at that time was John Fox, if I'm not mistaken, that they won that Super Bowl with. If my memory serves me correct, I could be wrong about that. And it could have been somebody else, Gary Kubiak or somebody could have been the coach. I think it was Gary Kubiak, as a matter of fact. I don't think it was John Fox. I think he got fired right before they turned it around. He was the guy that they lost with big to end up getting Peyton Manning and Gary Kubiak and all of those guys, I believe. Whatever the case may be, he saw winning up close and personal there as well. But he was most impactful, most influential in his time in San Francisco from 2017 to 2023. And he talked about it during his presser. He said, look, the early years were some dark times. And he's like, if you're not aligned, if you're not all on the same page, on one accord, it could get ugly real quick. And that's what would happen here. There would be cliques and factions within the building. And as we saw in Carolina, when shit starts going off the rails, it's dog eat dog. And now you starting to try to protect self. To hell with protecting and doing what's best for the greater good. Now you're like, yo, what's best for me? Where do I end up in all of this? Let me start making sure I put my bid in to save my ass, because that's the kind of culture you've created, that you fostered, where instead of us trying to stick together and make sure we figure this out together and we come out on the other side of this thing together, everybody's scrambling to figure out, how do I save myself? When that's the culture, you can't win. That's why going to Carolina to me isn't even optional, because that's the culture that they fostered in Carolina. Well, we don't want to lose, and we know Mr. Tepper gets upset when we lose. So, hey, he gonna start firing people. Let me make sure I do what I got to do, or I put my best bid in, or my best foot forward, so that if he does fire him, he'll think about keeping me. That's crazy right there. And he said, look, it was some dark times early on in that 49ers tenure, but we stuck together. There was a message that we made abundantly clear when we first got there. We never wavered. We stuck to the script. 2 years later, they in the Super Bowl in 2019. Or, yeah, I got that right. 2019. So, I think the reason he's going to select an offensive-minded guy is because what has he seen up close and personal in San Francisco? What has been the dynamic? It's not just that Kyle Shanahan is an offensive wizard, and what he's been able to do has been fantastic, and it's really been, to me, the linchpin of what's kept them successful, because he's been able to do it with multiple quarterbacks in San Francisco, because his scheme, it's almost QB proof. Like, you don't have to be great to flourish and thrive in that scheme, because they've surrounded those guys with playmakers, Kittle and Samuel and Ayuk and McCaffrey. They've surrounded the quarterback position with talent. Just get the ball in the hands of your talented playmakers, and if the quarterback can make enough plays, we should be fine, which is why Cam Newton called Brock Purdy a game manager. I think he's a little bit more than that. I think you're selling him a bit short, but I get it. I understand why, because that system is so damn good. But in Peters watching how that whole situation has unfolded, what also in conjunction with Kyle's success have they been able to replicate over and over again? Finding a defensive coordinator that's good enough to get the job done. The hardest thing to do in the NFL, if you ask me, is to call offensive plays. It's hard. It's hard to call offensive plays. It's hard to be consistent calling offensive plays. It's hard to get into a rhythm with your quarterback. It's hard to get everybody to football. It's hard being a play caller, unless you're just a natural. Some guys are, some guys aren't. Some guys grow into that position and that role and become excellent at it, but they didn't start out that way. Some guys are just naturals. Kyle was a natural. He's a natural. But he's seen firsthand, he being Adam Peters, that we can replace a defensive coordinator. They've had to do it 3 years in a row, or the last 2 years rather, right? They had to replace Robert Saleh with DeMeco Ryans. Then they had to replace DeMeco Ryans with Steve Wilks. And who knows? Wilks may actually get an opportunity. Did a really good job in his interim opportunity with the Panthers last year. He's killing it with the 49ers this year. He may get another opportunity. Who knows? But what he saw firsthand in San Francisco is that we can replace the defensive coordinator. You know what's hard to do? And he might have been in Denver, he might have been in New England long enough to see it when Josh McDaniels, trying to think, when did that whole situation happen with Jay Cutler and Brandon Marshall? It had to be that I don't know if he was a part of that. I don't know if he got to see that. Anyway, he's seen firsthand how tough it can be to replace an offensive-minded guy. I think he's seen that throughout his career. Probably saw it in New England towards the tail end of that run. Probably saw that in Denver. It's not the easiest thing to call plays. But he's also seen, hey, you can replace a defensive guy, but if you got that coach that's offensive minded and in lockstep with the quarterback, you got something for years to come. I think he's seen that, and I think that's what he wants. Philosophically, that's what he would prefer. Now, I think what he's also seen too, though, in his 3 stops, and Belichick was his first, head coach that he worked for, and Belichick is obviously a defensive-minded guy, is that you just need leadership, and he talked about that. You need good leadership, and that's what you're looking for first and foremost. And that's why I think they're going to take all of these interviews, or a lot of them, just to kind of get a feel for these guys, because Ben Johnson could be an excellent X's and O's guy, but he could be lacking in the leadership department. Who knows? Right? I think a lot of people feel that way about Bobby Slowick. Like, I've heard that he's a soft-spoken dude, not a big rah-rah guy. And, that's okay. Todd Bowles is similar in that he's not a very boisterous guy, kind of soft-spoken. But, when he speaks, it's impactful, but he doesn't say a ton, right? We've known that to be Todd Bowles. Or at least outward perception is that's how Todd Bowles is. Behind closed doors, he could be a damn chatterbox for all we know. But I think most people see, the leaders as the ones that can command a room, that, have a presence about them that permeates an entire building, and you get people to buy in just based off of the energy that you exude, your aura, so to speak. I think Ben Johnson, seeing what Dan Campbell has done, and I think that's another thing that's going to be so vital to Ben Johnson being the final piece to this puzzle, and why I think they're going to recruit him heavy, is because everything that we have to do here, Adam Peters experienced it in San Francisco, and Ben Johnson experienced it in Detroit. Nobody showed up. None of these guys showed up with a great opportunity right in front of them. All they had to do was come in and win. The 49ers were a 4-12 team, I think, when Peters, Lynch, and Shanahan inherited it. And I tell you this much, their ownership had a bad rap. Jed York and company, when Shanahan and all those guys we were talking about Jed York as one of the worst owners in football. He was up there. He wasn't, Snyder was still had a considerable lead on anybody else, but York was up there, and he was dysfunctional, and it was a mess. It was a mess in San Francisco. A lot of y'all don't remember that. But when they got there was a lot of shit to clean up. And they didn't start winning right away. And like he said, it was some dark times early on. But they figured it out. They got it. When they first got there, they figured out what the messaging was going to be and how they were going to move. And once they figured out this is how we're going to move, this is the direction we're going in, these are the type of players we're looking for, everybody was on one accord, and they stuck to that no matter what. And the end result is that they've been in the NFC Championship game 4 out of the last 5 years, I believe. Let's see, 19, 21, 22, and then it'll be 4 out of 5 if they go this year. It's 3 out of 4 right now. They've been in the NFC Championship game 3 out of the last 4 years. And if they go again this year, it'll be 4 out of the last 5. Sans for 2020, when they were just battered and bruised from an injury standpoint, they're the Kansas City Chiefs of the NFC. That's essentially what I just told you, minus the Super Bowl wins. Minus the Super Bowl wins. But that's who they've been. So to build that from where they started into what they are now, to be a huge part of that, to look at Ben Johnson showing up in Detroit when they were one of the worst teams in football. It didn't improve all that much that 1st year. They started out the gate in the 2nd year struggling at 1-6. to overcome all of that. Remember, as I mentioned to you guys, Dan Campbell in his first 23 games was 4-19. 4-19. Like a lot of people just, the Lions are great, this, that, the third. Dan Campbell was fighting for his life as a head coach in this league. Fighting for his life. Being the same Dan Campbell, he never wavered. He was aggressive. Even when they were losing football games, he was aggressive. Just like you see now, this didn't happen overnight. When they started out 4-19, he was doing the same shit. Same thing. And then everything's just, it clicked. They got all the pieces that they needed. The buy-in had always been there, but they finally started to do things the right way. The ball started to bounce their way. They started to execute better because they were in lockstep or aligned in Detroit. And if you watch Detroit celebrate that win, the first game ball Dan Campbell gave out was to the GM, Brad Holmes. And he said, it was you and it was me, but it was you who started this. You saw the vision. We put this thing together. We talked about the type of players that we needed to make this thing come to reality. And you went out and you made it happen, and he gave him the game ball, and he talked about that grit. You remember, that's the Lions, that's their buzzword, right? That's their slogan, their mantra, grit. We're all about grit. When we watched Hard Knocks 2 years ago, that was what was on the wall, grit. It was all around the building. They are in lockstep in Detroit. Ben Johnson had a quote that I read the other day where he said, Dan Campbell is a great leader. I've learned so much from him. Don't think that stuff goes unnoticed. I think that's the kind of leadership that they're looking for in Washington. I think Ben Johnson may be able to provide them with some of that, having seen what great leadership looks like firsthand. Adam Peters, having come from a place where he saw great leadership amongst himself and the others, and now he's getting an opportunity to do it himself, and he's going to try to emulate a lot of the stuff that he saw in San Francisco. And I think he sees a lot of that situation that he came from in San Francisco transpiring right now as we speak in Detroit. What better guy to grab and pull from that situation to try to help you turn around in Washington than the guy that's architecting that offense? Really, which has been the one constant with Detroit, even with the losing, and it's been Ben Johnson's offense. So I think it's going to be an offensive guy, and I think it's going to be Ben Johnson, but I won't rule out anybody. Overall, he didn't say anything. I think the last thing that stuck out to me, not all that much, because I've told you guys this isn't rocket science. And anybody that does it the opposite way, it isn't going to last very long. But you build your team through the draft, you supplement it through free agency. And he pretty much said the same thing. We're going to build our team through the draft. So there's that. But there wasn't much to this press conference. I don't know what you guys were expecting him to say. I don't know what you were really looking for from this press conference. Everything that I expected, I got in this press conference. It satisfied everything that I needed to hear from him. He checked off every single box. It's all about getting the head coach now, and he mentioned and referenced that at least 3 or 4 times throughout the process. Like, I can't talk to you about any of those decisions because I literally just got here, 1 and 2. I got to get the head coach, and then he's got to get his staff, and then we all got to sit down as a collective group in collaboration with one another. And we heard that word referenced a number of times, so that we can come to a decision on a lot of these players and figure out what direction we want to go in. What are the type of football players that we're looking for? You can't know that until you have your head coach here, right? And his staff. So I think you got just about as much as you were going to get out of him. You know, he talked about how all of his decisions, all of the things that have happened to him through his journey have shaped and molded him into the general manager that he hopes to be. And he said, look, I have a lot of, stories of, things that didn't work out. And a lot of people like to point to the Trey Lance situation in San Francisco. He was a part of that. And you don't run from your losses. You learn from them. People that run from their losses, those are the people that ultimately lose in the end, right? Big time. It's the people that learn from their mistakes and continue to grow from those situations. Those are the ones that end up being winners in the end. So all in all, I'm impressed. I feel like they're going to get the offensive-minded head coach, despite all of the defensive candidates that exist on the list. Again, I think Ben Johnson is not here only if he decides to go and chase the money in Carolina. That's the only way he's not here in Washington. Unless they sit down with him, they're underwhelmed by his interview. He doesn't give off the appearance of someone that can be the type of leader they're looking for. And then one of these defensive coaches come in here and absolutely knocks it out of the ballpark. And they're like, yo, this is the guy. This is the man that they will follow anywhere. This is the guy we got to hire, right? I still think he wants to do it the offensive way. And then I want to throw this out here. I don't know if y'all saw this or not, but I'm paying attention to all of this shit. The Bears interviewed Greg Roman for their offensive coordinator position that is vacant. We talked about the vacancy last week when we had the conversation about, number one being in, I think, within striking distance for Washington. Obviously they're at number 2, but I thought the retaining of head coach Matt Eberflus was the first in a number of dominoes to fall this offseason for the Bears. And I think it's the first domino that needed to fall in Justin Fields being back in Chicago. And I know some people looked at it as in a totally different way and saying, no, they fired the rest of the staff. And that's an indication that they're going to get an all-new staff in here to work with the new quarterback. I beg to differ. I see it, and I told y'all this when I made that video. If you were going to draft, and I mean that decision may not even be made yet. We're jumping to conclusions, but all of the dots that I'm connecting right now, all of the moves that are being made by Chicago, all to me point towards Justin Fields being back. First of all, the city wants him back. The players want him back. I think that counts for something. Their team president spoke and he said, hey, we want to win and we want to win now, but we also realize there's something to be said about continuity and, having some sort of consistency that allows you to grow. You don't win overnight. And we feel like we're building some of that here, but we also understand that we got to win, right? That resonated with me. But I told you it doesn't make sense to bring back Matt Eberflus. And one of the arguments, and this is a good argument, and we've talked about this too, you can isolate Matt Eberflus from whatever's going on the offensive side of football. They brought back Matt Eberflus strictly off the strength of the fact that the Bears defensively were playing lights out football at the end of the season, and they didn't want to disrupt that. They spent a lot of money on the defensive side of the football. They're probably going to spend a little bit more because Jalen Johnson is now a free agent, but they spent money at the linebacker position. They traded for Montez Sweat, gave him a bunch of money. They spent a lot of money on the defensive side of football, and they want to see that money be utilized in the best way possible. And Eberflus started to get those boys to play at a high level. So they're like, hey, let's not mess with that. That's what we spent a lot of money at. Let's keep that train rolling. We can isolate and separate the offense from him. He'll be the head coach, but we know he's overseeing the defense. We'll let him handle that. And a lot of you are like, yeah, he ain't got shit to do with offense. And you're not wrong. But here's the thing. If you're getting Caleb Williams and you're the Bears, and I get it, Ryan Poles had nothing to do with Ryan Pace and how the situation went with Justin Fields, but If you don't learn from the past, you're doomed to repeat it. They literally drafted Justin Fields into a situation with a lame duck coach and GM. They didn't get it done. They both got fired, and then Fields had to start over again. Are you really trying to set Caleb Williams up in a similar situation where he comes in here and you give him this new staff? If it doesn't work and Eberflus is fired, unless you're promoting one of those guys from the offensive staff to head coach, we starting this shit all over again. Like, do you really want to do that to Caleb Williams? I don't think that's what you do if you were going to draft a quarterback. You just start anew. You just start over. All over. And to me, Greg Roman, and I've said this, I said, why not go get Greg Roman? I said, I know it sucks because you just went out and you got DJ Moore and he's coming off of a career year, and anybody that's played in Greg Roman's system or watched it for any amount of time knows that it's not wide receiver friendly, but rather tight end and running back friendly. And so you're not going to maximize. This was the problem in Baltimore, which is why they moved on from him. You're not going to maximize the talent at receiver if Greg Roman's your offensive coordinator. We saw it in San Francisco with Kaepernick. It didn't matter who the receivers were because it was Cap's show. He was going to run it. You had to respect his legs. You was going to respect the tight end position with Vernon Davis, and you're going to respect the running backs with Frank Gore and whomever, right? Like, they had a system. Same thing in Baltimore. Tight ends for days, 3-4 different backs, and Lamar Jackson, you got to respect it. You can do the same thing with Justin Fields. You got 2 tight ends that you feel really good about. I think you got a really solid stable of backs. I think you could add one more, though, to that mix. But you got a solid stable of backs. And you got Justin Fields, who's an elite athlete. Greg Roman can do wonders for his career. We've seen him do it with guys that were just as, if not less talented. We know he can do it with Justin Fields. So then the question begs, would you even interview Greg Roman if you're drafting Caleb Williams? Or is Greg Roman the perfect guy to come in? So I've already said it. He's the perfect coordinator for Justin Fields. If you want to win next year, go get Greg Roman. You'll win next year in Chicago if the defense plays the way that they played down the stretch. Greg Roman will whip that offense into shape. Now, again, guys like DJ Moore might not be excited about that because receivers tend to not eat in his offense. But if you want to be successful, they got the tight ends to do it. They got the running backs to do it. That screams to me, hey, we bringing back Justin Fields. I can't speak for you, but now they didn't hire him. They just interviewed him. But if they go back and they hire Greg Roman as their offensive coordinator, you're going to have a hard time selling to me that they're not going to hold on to Justin Fields and move on from number 1 overall. I'm going to have a hard time buying that. Sorry, not sorry. Now, all the dots right now speak to the Bears, to me, and we're seeing it from 2 different lenses, and that's fine. Everything screams to me the Bears are trading out of that pick right now. So, again, if you want him, Caleb Williams, that is, because I've already been very adamant, the Bears aren't going to stay at 1 if they're not taking Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams will be the number 1 overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft. I assure you of that. Whether it's Chicago or somebody else making the pick, that's the real question. But what isn't up for debate is who's going to be the number 1 overall pick. Don't allow yourself to make this situation and this process any harder than it is. He's going number 1. Don't tell you, oh, well, what if this team likes Drake May? That's cool. He ain't going 1. Drake May ain't going 1. Jaden Daniels ain't going 1. Marvin Harrison Jr. ain't going 1. Let's not make this thing complicated. Caleb Williams is going number 1 overall. Receivers don't go 1 overall. Offensive linemen rarely go 1. They go 2 all the time. Edge rushers go 2 all the time. You'll get one that goes 1 when there's no quarterback. Well, we got quarterbacks this year, so that's not happening. When you got quarterbacks go 1. The only time you don't have a quarterback go 1 overall is if you don't believe in that quarterback draft class, like the case with 2022. So understand what's happening here. So it's either the Bears are taking him or they're going to allow somebody else to come up and take him. They're not going to waste the asset that is the number 1 overall pick if they're not going to take Caleb Williams themselves. So I still think that they're moving on from the pick and holding on to Fields. But, we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, as he should have, Adam Peters kept everything close to the vest. I think he said all the right things that he was supposed to say. And I left that feeling just as good as I did going in. And now the next phase begins, and that's finding the head coach. And I think they have a Zoom conference with somebody here in the next day or two coming up. So we'll keep tabs on all of these different things, but I'm waiting for the 22nd. Like these Zooms are cool. You're not hiring anybody off of a Zoom conference. All you're doing is checking a box. Like, to me, if you're truly interested in a candidate, you're bringing them into your building. If I hit you up on Zoom, that means, hey, you cool and all, but ... Because I got to think highly enough of you to bring you in for an interview. If I think you cool, like, I hang out with him, like, but I wouldn't date her, right? Like, I hang out with her, she cool or whatever. That's the Zoom. But if you're like, nah, I'm really feeling her, like, I got to have her, that's when you bring them in for an interview. So I'm kind of waiting until the 22nd, to be honest with you. Raheem Morris has been eliminated. Can you talk to him now face-to-face? I don't know. Again, I don't know how any of this works. I think you have to wait. If they were coming off of a playoff team, I think you have to wait until the 22nd, even if they are eliminated. That's what I'm waiting for. After the 22nd and they really start getting the ball rolling, because, hell, the Lions could still be playing. As of right now, with their opponent, it pretty much feels like they'll be in the NFC Championship game, and it feels like they'll be playing. But stranger things have happened. I can't see Baker Mayfield and the Bucs strolling into Detroit and getting a win and coming out and going to the NFC Championship game. That would be crazy, right? But we may not get to talk to this man until the week between the Super Bowl and the championship game. That 1 week that they have, he might be like, yo, I'm so focused and locked in on trying to win a Super Bowl. I'm not taking no face-to-face interviews. I'll holler at y'all after this is all over with. And if that's the guy you truly are interested in, you'll wait, right? But while you're waiting, you'll interview other candidates. You'll have all the other interviews done, and then you'll essentially be waiting on him to see if this is in fact the guy that trumps all the other candidates that we've already talked to. That's why it was a little weird last year, and you knew we were putting all of our eggs in the Eric Bieniemy basket because we had time to talk to as many candidates as we wanted to, and we really didn't talk to but maybe 1 or 2 candidates, and then we got stiff-armed by like 2 or 3 other candidates. Like, nah, I'm good, man. Thanks, but I'm good. I'm gonna pass. So I was like, yo, if you're really interested in some of these other candidates, like Greg Roman's name came up, for instance, last year. I'm like, if you're interested, just talk to the man. Why are we waiting on talking to Eric Bieniemy? You can still talk to these dudes, and then when Eric Bieniemy becomes available, talk to him, and then you already got your process wrapped up. But I expect that to take place because this is a much more efficient group that we're dealing with here. It's not discombobulated. It's not them kind of just going off the cuff. This is going to be a very measured approach. Everything that is being done will be done in a tactful but also purposeful manner. And I think it's ultimately going to get us to the end game that we want, which is getting a coach that we think is the best fit here. And I think it's going to end up being Ben Johnson when it's all said and done. But I think they, unlike the GM process where I felt like they knew who they wanted all along. And if it wasn't Peters, if like he wasn't locked in, wanted the job, or there was some kind of disconnect there, or he was using us to go back to San Francisco, whatever the case, they had their plan B in Ian Cunningham, but it always felt like plan A was Adam Peters, and they got plan A. with this head coaching thing, it feels a little bit more like, hey, we're going to go through this process for real. Like the GM one felt like, hey, we're going to do the 2 minority candidates that we got to knock out. And, we'll bring in one more dude just to make it feel like it's a real competition. But it's these 2 dudes that we really, truly want, right? It's these 2 candidates that we really want. And it's really Adam Peters that we want. And we just got Ian Cunningham here just in case Peters doesn't work out. That felt like a 2-horse race the entire time. Really, with Peters well out in front, by the way. This coaching search feels like it's a lot more wide open. I think Johnson is the favorite, but he's not the runaway favorite, if that makes any sense. I think somebody could walk into one of these interviews and wow them and change their perspective on how they feel. And that's why I think it would almost be beneficial for Ben Johnson to come and do it last. Normally, when I used to be in school and we had to do, reports, or we had to do presentations in front of the class, I was trying to set the bar. Let me go first. You don't have anything to measure me up against. So even if my shit is trash, you ain't going to be able to say it's super trash because you ain't really seen nobody else do it. So let me just get mine out of the way, set the bar, even if it's a low bar and everybody else in the class knocks it out of the park. You're going to be done forgot about my weak ass presentation at the very beginning, right? So that was always my mindset. Let me get my shit out the way. If I kill it, now this is the standard that you're being held to. If I knock it out the park, if my shit is trash, well, everybody's just going to jump over that bar. And by the time you get to the 9th, 10th presentation, you didn't forgot about how weak my shit was. Either way, I'm straight. I think this is one of those situations where you might want to go last. Almost like, sort of like overtime, right? How in college football, you never take the ball first in college football overtime. Why? Because you always want to know what you need to win. If that other team kicks a field goal, well, I'll score a touchdown, I win. If that other team scores a touchdown but misses the extra point, I just need a touchdown, extra point, and I win. If the other team scores a touchdown, I need a touchdown. I can't kick a field goal. I got 4 downs every time till I score, or else the game's over anyway, right? You know what you need. You always defer if you win the toss in overtime. In college, this kind of feels like that. Let me see what all these other candidates are talking about. If you're Washington and then you had a guy that you really want go last, and if he comes in and he knocks it out of the park, you've already talked to everybody else. It ain't no need to go back through that pool of candidates. That's the guy that I want. Let me just go ahead and get this process started. Whereas if you go through it first, you hit him first, but you're like, hey, but I still want to talk to these other guys. It gives him opportunities to talk to other teams. And maybe he goes in here, wows one of these other teams, and they're like, bro, we got to have you. Right? You see what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to risk losing him by taking too long in this process, because he may be one of these people that wants to get it done quickly. The sooner the better. So, hey, I ain't going to be sitting here waiting on you to make a decision, even though I want your job. There's other jobs out here. And I told y'all, I think this is the most competitive field of coaches I've ever seen in my life. I mean, think about the names of some of the coaches that are out there. So you've got the retread coaches that feel like they're excellent, whether it's Harbaugh coming off of a national championship. You got Bill Belichick, one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. Mike Vrabel, who we see as one of these shrewd coaches that maximizes his talent, gets the most out of what he's presented with, and a guy that can out-coach you on any given Sunday. I've often referred to him as the white Mike Tomlin, except that he's had losing seasons. But similar to Tomlin, he gets the most out of his team, right? These are all retreads that are available that you don't view as retreads. Like, shit, we'd be lucky to get our hands on one of these dudes. That's how a lot of these teams feel, right? Then you got all of these first-timers that you're just salivating over. Slowick, and Johnson, McDonald, and the list goes on and on and on of guys that you go, man, I wouldn't mind. Don't forget about Pete Carroll. He's out there. I don't see him getting a job, though. But Pete Carroll's out there, if that's your cup of tea. Like, there's so many options. It's never like this, by the way. It's never like this. so many different directions you could go in. And then there's still guys that are retreads that people are looking at saying, hey, man, this dude is ready for another opportunity. Like, say, Raheem Morris, right? Like a Steve Wilkes, potentially, in San Francisco. You know, don't forget about Aaron Glenn as another potential first-timer that had his name circulate. Lou Almirono, who I think eventually will get an opportunity, who's been really good in Cincinnati for a very long time as their defensive coordinator. Another name to watch out. Like, it's so many candidates. It's ridiculous. So it'll be interesting to see which direction they go in. Dan Quinn is another name in the same vein as a Raheem Morris, right? Another opportunity. It might be different this time around. So many names to choose from. You can only choose one. Choose wisely. I still contend that Ben Johnson is the man for the job and is the guy that Adam Peters is going to go after aggressively. But it'll be interesting to see how this process plays out, because the longer the Lions win, the further out his interview gets pushed. It is not like other teams are talking to him. Nobody will be able to talk to him. But I think when he's able to talk and he's ready to talk for the first time, I think we'll be first in line, right? But while you're waiting, you can knock out all these interviews, and you'll know if one of these dudes wows you and knocks your socks off. Then you say, all right, here's what we're going to do. And we really felt Raheem Morris's interview. We got him right now as the lead dog in the clubhouse. Ben Johnson's going to have to come in here and sell us and leapfrog this man. Because right now, of all the candidates that we've talked to, he's the one that we're giving the job to right now. If there were no other candidates, but there's still Ben Johnson out here looming. So we're going to talk to him, right? Or it could be Bobby Slowick. They could talk to Bobby Slowick. I don't know if you're going to get that same energy. And here's the thing with Bobby Slowick. I love what he's done, but you know how I am. If you know me, you know how I operate. You know what I'm about to say. Do it again. It's cool to do it once. Do it again. I'm pretty sure he can, because these Shanahan dudes, they don't fade after a year. They just keep doing this shit over and over and over again, because the scheme is fail proof. So they just keep doing this shit over and over and over again. So I don't doubt for 1 second that he's going to be able to recreate what he did this year, but do it again. I know Ben Johnson can do it again. And this time they were ready for him. This time they said, hey, we know what he's about. We know he got Jared Goff. Here's how we're going to attack him. And he still went out and was putting up ridiculous numbers offensively this season. I know he can do it. I got the proof. It wasn't lucky the year before. It's all legit. With Bobby Slowick, I'm like, hey, you got your shit off this year. Do it again. We'll see what happens. Let's see what happens in the comment section. Shout out to everybody in the comments. Really appreciate y'all. If you haven't already done so, please take the time to hit the thumbs up. Subscribe to the Louie T Network if you haven't already done so. I mean, we're going to be doing some tremendous things on the channel this offseason. If you're a Commanders fan, obviously, we're going wall to wall. I mean, this is, like I said, this is the biggest offseason in franchise history, aside from last year getting new ownership. Nothing tops that, right? But this is the biggest offseason in franchise history without changing ownership. This is the start of the new beginning. This is the start of everything we've been asking for the last decade plus. Whenever you decided that we needed new ownership, for a lot of us, that probably happened 2 decades ago. But whenever that was for you, you've been waiting on this exact moment since then. It's here now. Now the work begins. Let's see what happens with this team and what the next step is. But shout out to everybody who's going to go along on this journey with me. For those of you who've been here pretty much the whole time or been here for a substantial amount of time, you know what it is. It's going to make it that much sweeter when we finally get to where we're going. But for those of you who just got here, plenty of space left. Welcome aboard. And look, we're going to get there. All right? We're going to get there. We don't know when, but we're going to get there. And when we do, we're going to party. Anyway, I digress. Brad Woodward, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Brad writes, I wanted to be impressed with the press conference, but just wasn't. I want to see more confidence and passion. Throw away the notes, speak from the heart, tell us who you are and what you want. I mean, that's one way to look at it. I don't really know what you were expecting, Brad. Like, I don't know if you were looking for Eric Bieniemy's press conference from last year. How did that work out for us? I mean, he came in here and he gave us a sermon, and we all fell for it hook, line, and sinker, and we walked away so impressed and charged up, and you know, all of that kind of was aired. It was just all talk. None of that showed itself on the field. He didn't make adjustments. He wasn't willing to conform to the talent that he had. He was too stuck in trying to prove that his scheme works, instead of saying to himself, how do I get the most out of what I have? This isn't Kansas City. We don't have a Travis Kelce here. How do I get the most out of the talent that I do have? Don't have the same offensive line I had in Kansas City. How do I circumvent that? He never tried to figure out how he could be the best version of himself with the players and the things that he was given here. But he sold us a dream. I wasn't looking for that. I wasn't looking for you to sell me on anything. I just wanted to know, why us? Why'd you choose us? That's all I thought we were going to get, and that's all we really truly did get out of this. That's all I was looking for. He wasn't going to tell us what he was going to do at head coach. He wasn't going to tell us, what they're going to do with the number 2 overall pick, what he's going to do with this roster. Could he have done it in a more, vibrant and enthusiastic way? Sure. If you want Dan Campbell, maybe you'll get that down the road from somebody else. You want biting off kneecaps and all of that, that's not who he is. I just want him to be who he is. And what he's been is one of the best talent evaluators in the NFL over the last decade. Just keep being that. You keep doing that, and we won't have any problems, and we will embrace you with open arms, and we will put you on a pedestal. You'll get everything that you could hope and dream of here in Washington if you do the job that you've been hired to do. So I don't know what you were looking for. Look, he wanted to read his notes. Some people can get rid of the notes and just talk. Remember, Nick Sirianni was stuttering and stammering in his first press conference, and 2 years later he had the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Like, that stuff doesn't bother me. He was confident enough for me. He seemed assured of himself. He knows what he's capable of. He knows one thing that it was abundantly clear is he knows that there's a job in front of him. This is not good. He did say that it's not a full-blown rebuild, right? He did say that there are good people in the building. They just need leadership. And he's not wrong about that stuff, but he also, when he talked about this roster, he also pretty much acknowledged, hey, it's some work here to be done, bro. Like, I'm not walking into, one of the best rosters in the NFL, and I just got to make a couple of tweaks. I understand there's a lot of work to be done here. That's why you're here, bro. Make it happen, right? The Original Dream. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Original Dream writes, Adam Peters caused the Eagles and Cowboys to lose. I know he was a part of those, drafts, and he was a huge influence on what the 49ers did and how their roster has been shaped. And he systematically took both those rosters, those teams were systematically taken apart by San Francisco's roster. And I think it was those ass whoopings that were dished out by San Francisco this year that put the doubt in the minds of both the Eagles and Cowboys as their season wore on. Like, even if they were still the big bad 49ers waiting, even if you won this game or won that game, as long as San Francisco was alive, that was a hurdle that they were going to have to conquer that I think most of those teams didn't think they would be capable of conquering either way. But the doubt for the Eagles started with the 49ers. No doubt about that. It started with the 49ers. They never recovered from that ass whooping, and it just went downhill from there. For Dallas, they recovered from the early ass whooping, but I think that ass whooping made everybody feel like same old Cowboys. Don't matter what the hell you do. You can't beat a team like San Francisco, not on the road especially. And it proved to be true. They couldn't even get it done at home. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, I heard John Fox's name suggested as a defensive coordinator. I don't like the idea. What says you? I'm done with the old retreads. Especially Fox has been out of the game for how long now? Like, that's the same kind of shit we did with Jack Del Rio. You went and got a dude that's been out of the game for 3-4 years to try to call. That's not what I'm looking to do. I don't mind a retread, right? Just give me one that's been in the game, that's seen the advent of, the read option and the mobile quarterback and spread, these offenses that spread you out. I want a defensive coordinator that's seen the transformation from, the league being a passing league to being this wildly aggressive passing league where 3rd and 1, 3rd and short is no longer a run down. It's now a pass down. Like, I need my defensive coordinator. Like, the last time John Fox coached, 3rd and 1 was a rundown, and there was nothing to talk about. You might play action fake off of it, but it's a rundown. 3rd and 1 is now a pass down in the NFL. 3rd and 2, you're definitely passing now. Unless you're going for it on 4th down, where you're saying, okay, well, we know we're going for it on 4th, so we'll run it just to get to, 4th and 1. But even then, you run it on 3rd and 2, thinking you're going for it, hoping to catch the defense off guard. But you run it on 3rd and 2, the mindset is supposed to be, I run it on 3rd and 2 because if I only get 1 yard, I'm running it again on 4th and 1, and I'm going to get that 1 yard, and I'm going to get the first down. That's not even how teams operate no more. I'm running it to try to catch you off guard because you think I'm throwing it because 3rd and 2 is a pass down. You don't know I'm going for it on 4th down. So you don't know what my thought process is. So I'm going to try to catch you off guard. But if I only get 1 yard, I'm probably throwing the bitch on 4th and 1. I didn't run it to just get 1 yard and then run it again. I ran it to see if I can catch you off guard, get the first down. If I don't, I'm probably throwing it on 4th and 1. And I don't want a defensive coordinator that shit's going to surprise him. So no, I haven't even heard his name, to be honest with you. I haven't heard his name brought up, but I'm not interested in any more, older defensive coordinators who have been out of football for 3-4 years at a time. And it's way longer for John Fox. I think his last job was Denver. We talking about over a decade? You couldn't have heard his name, for real. I just brought him up because I was talking about Denver when they won the Super Bowl, but he wasn't a part of that. You couldn't have heard his name. There's no way. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, if we hire an offensive-minded head coach, of course, clearly, it'd have to be an offensive-minded guy, and then you go out and get a defensive coordinator. Mark Mullinex, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Mark Mullinex writes, hey, Lou, LOL, did you see Jerry Jones crying? It kind of looked like Law, LOL. Tell him to drink nice and slow. He's hoping to be on the bottle a long time. I feel like we should get Bobby Slowick, the QB whisperer. I saw that clip, but I didn't know if that was if that was recent. That could have been Jerry crying a whole nother time when he thought they was going to win the Super Bowl. I don't know if that came from this weekend. I do know that he said some pretty profound things this weekend, including that was the most disappointing playoff loss he's ever had in his career because he didn't see it coming. He was like, that's the most surprising, I think. Not disappointing, the most surprising one. Because he didn't see that coming. He didn't see that ass whooping. They hadn't lost a game at home in a full NFL calendar, right? I think they hadn't lost in like 16 games at home or something crazy like that. So he didn't see that. He got blindsided by that one. And that's probably why everybody has to go after that. There's no bouncing back after that. As far as Bobby Slowick is concerned, I'm hearing a lot of this QB whisperer stuff as if he's done this multiple times. I'm not knocking Bobby Slowick. I think the guy is brilliant in what he's done. And knowing where he came from instills even more confidence in me that he can duplicate what he did this year. But I still want to see it again. So as far as calling him a quarterback whisperer, well, he's only whispered in the ear of one quarterback. That's CJ Stroud. So unless you have empirical proof that he whispered in Brock Purdy's ear as well, and that's where the success lies, he's can't call him a whisperer if he's only done it once. I can say that he's super talented, and I think he might be a supremely gifted play caller. And, you know, with his background, and I love guys, which is what Raheem Morris is. I love guys that have studied on both sides of the ball. Because if you really want to know the ins and outs of offense and how to scheme guys open, the best thing to do is coach defense for a little while, because that's going to familiarize you with what the defense is thinking, how they're trying to take this away, what, you know, coverages are schemed and designed to do. And then by knowing the ins and outs of the defense, you know what the holes are, you know, where the openings are, where the opportunities to take advantage are. And that's how you can diagram and scheme up your offense and call your plays. And he was told by Kyle Shanahan, I want to say it was Kyle, might have been Mike. It was Mike, I think, Shanahan, that made Bobby Slowick a defensive what are they called when they first come in? It was a quality control assistant. He was a defensive quality control assistant when he first came in, even though he was an offensive guy. And he wanted nothing to do with defense. He was like, if you want to learn offense at its highest levels, you got to understand defenses in and out first. He went and did that. And then by the time he got with Kyle in San Francisco, he was ready to get on the offensive side. And you've seen what he's done. So I like him too. And if he's here, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Again, I just don't know what kind of a leader he is. I got a good idea of what Ben Johnson, because of who he's been around, how that rubs off on you, right? He's only been around DeMeco Ryans, well, in a head coaching capacity. He's been around DeMeco Ryans for 4 or 5 years, however long they've been together in San Francisco. But this is his first time coaching under him. He's seen the impact that DeMeco Ryans has had as a head coach and the role that he's had in Houston as the Texas head coach. But yeah, I don't know. There's still a lot of mystery for me with Bobby Slowick. A lot less guesswork for me with Ben Johnson. A lot more guesswork with Bobby Slowick, I guess, is where I'm at with mine. But still love the guy. And if he ended up here, I wouldn't have any issues with it. Video channel, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. He writes, if we hire Mike McDonald, who could you see as the OC? T. Martin and Greg Lewis are top offensive assistants over there. Also, shout out to AP all day. I don't know. That would be interesting. With offensive coordinator or defensive coordinators that end up getting head coaching jobs, you always want to go and look at ties in particular, because like Sean McVay, he didn't grab, when he got his job in LA, he didn't grab an assistant at Washington. He didn't reach back and grab a linebackers coach or a DB's coach with Washington to take with him. He's like, nah, leave all of these stinking asses there. He went and got Wade Phillips. If you remember when he first went to LA, he went and got Wade Phillips. He didn't even want anything to do with defense, which is why he went and got a guy that he could just say, hey, defense is yours. Handle that. Over time, he realized I need better than Wade, and he moved on from him. And that's when Brandon Staley got the job, and he was brilliant, and they were the number one defense in the NFL, and that's how he got the job with the Chargers. And then he brought in Raheem Morris, and they won the Super Bowl, right? And the rest is history. But sometimes you don't just automatically take a guy with you. I always feel like it's more likely that occurs when it's a offensive guy that'll just reach back, grab a defensive dude that he's comfortable with, and bring him with him. When you're a defensive coordinator, you're looking for the best fit. Who's the guy that I feel like gives me the best opportunity? But Also, in coaching, it's not hard. Usually you can connect the dots. When you're working with somebody, as much as these coaches work with one another for the amount of time that they work with one another, if you've been somewhere for 5 years and this dude has been there for all 5 years, you're seeing these guys every day. You see their work ethic. You know the kind of work they put in. You know what they're capable of. And you see him and you say, he's ready for an opportunity. And if you get yours first, I'm going to bring him with me. That's usually how it goes. Probably 75, 80% of the time. So you point out some of the assistants in Baltimore makes sense but also don't discount that he's been back and forth between the Harbaughs. So there could be somebody on the Michigan staff that he believes in, that he says, hey, I think that guy's got a chance to be really special in the NFL, and goes and gets him. Could be somebody in Baltimore, as you mentioned, and he brings that guy with him. You just don't know. You always want to look to see where they've been, who they've crossed paths with, and how that may affect what they decide to do. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. King of the Bluegrass writes, I watched some more Drake May, and man, he has more happy feet, like his daddy is named Pixar. I haven't watched anybody. All I can, go off of is what you guys have told me. I've had mixed, reviews on every other quarterback other than Caleb Williams. It's mostly been all positive with him, outside of, some questions about maturity. And I don't even think that's fair to put on his plate yet. Some people are trying to make this kid out to be somebody, like some bad kid, like he's got a rap sheet or something. Like y'all are doing too much. Can we question his maturity? Sure. There's reasons as to why you do that. Absolutely. But that doesn't, just being immature doesn't make you a bad kid. It doesn't make you a bad human being. Let's get that straight first and foremost. You can grow up. And for everybody, growing up looks different. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but that doesn't make you a bad person. So, like, some of these narratives that you see, and this is draft time. This is what I tell you. I believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man Louie T. Like, you got to be really on this shit, because you get some misinformation real quick. And a lot of y'all run with it on socials. It's embarrassing almost, some of y'all. Like, I can't tell you how many people added me on this random ass post from this dude. All you got, it literally would take you one more button click to verify something. That's it. Just click on that person's thumbnail and it'll take you right to their page. And all you got to do is just scroll down, maybe 2 or 3 posts, maybe 4 or 5, and you can see the agenda. You can see that they're not a legitimate. A lot of times it'll tell you right there in the bio, right? But you just scroll down a little bit and read, look at how many followers they have, and you'll know right away, this is fake news. Yet some of y'all see this shit and automatically at LouieTeeNetwork, I get it, and I'm like, bro, this is fake news. Why you even bring this to me? Like, it don't take much. I'm not even asking you to lead the app. Just asking you to press one button, man. Click on that person's thumbnail. Click on that person's name. And just see where it takes you. But I said all of that to say this. I don't know what's going on with these quarterbacks. I'll have a definitive way that I feel probably before the combine. I'll probably have the way that I feel about them prior to the combine. And we go from there, right? It's not going to take me long because I'm going to dive in heavy and really attack these quarterbacks aggressively, because I know we get one of the top 3. And I don't even need to go. I'm gonna look at the other ones too. But I already know for the sake of our team, it won't be anybody past the top 3 guys. If we're not taking one of them, we ain't taking a quarterback either at all, or the guy we taking ain't the future of the franchise. So we'll see what happens. So you say he's got happy feet. Okay. I bleed Giants blue. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, crazy stat. Hurts is 0-3 in the playoffs when the defense allows more than 7 points. I mean, you cherry picking with that one, though, right? Because what you're trying to say is essentially they got to gift wrap him a dub for him to win. But, I mean, when you look at the games that they won in those 2 games that they won last year, Daniel Jones was ass. They were going to beat them anyway, right? Now, I will say that they didn't get off to the fastest of starts offensively in that Giants game, but they were going to beat them anyway. Whether the Giants scored 17 or 20, they were going to win because the offense was good enough to do what they needed to do. I think they would have lost that 49ers game. But to your point, when the defense hasn't been lights out and they've needed Hurts to carry them, he hasn't been able to do that. That's essentially what you're getting at. Remember, one of those losses is the Super Bowl, and you could argue that performance Jalen Hurts turned in is the greatest Super Bowl performance we've seen by a losing quarterback in its history. So take it for what it's worth. Again, this is the thing. You'll never be able to get me with numbers because I watch these games. I live them. So I know. So I'm always able to call people out on their bullshit when they try to throw out numbers. I see what you're doing here. It's not crazy, but we know better. We know better. I'll just say this. I still think Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. I've seen him do enough. I've seen him I haven't wavered in thinking that he's a damn good quarterback in this league. I watched the shit that his coordinator put him through last night and have been putting him through pretty much all season long. It was just they were winning. They were getting shit done. But once that swag left and teams started to say, wait a minute, this coordinator doesn't know what the hell he's doing, should change it, right? It changed significantly. I still think he's a good quarterback and you can win a lot of football games, as proven last year with Jalen Hurts as your quarterback. They don't win 10 games this year without him playing well. So it's a conversation that's going to be had over the offseason because he did not finish well. But we'll see. I just know I like where we sit. That's all I'm worried about. I like where we sit at. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, for what I heard from his press conference was we will have an alpha dog in each position group. So he made it abundantly clear that, hey, all these ass whoopings y'all took this year, don't worry about them. Them shits is over with. Like, we might not win every game, but you won't be out here giving up 40 spots every other week and getting beat by 2-3 scores every week. That shit ain't happening. I mean, this year, like, somebody showed me that this was the worst scoring defense in history, in franchise history. And I wanted to make an excuse. My first excuse immediately was, bro, it's 17 games. They showed me that in week 16, though. So we had already surpassed the most points given up through 16 weeks. And we still had another game left. I was like, damn, I can't even use that. If you'd have brought that to me at the end of the season, I would have just dismissed it as, man, it's 17 games. They brought that to me with still a week of football left. We had just finished week 17 going into week 18. And we had already given up like 480 points on the season, which was like, I think 10 or 15 points more than the most points or 8 or 5 points, whatever it was, more than the most given up in a season by any, Redskins football team or Commanders squad the previous years. And then we gave up 40, whatever, to Dallas. So we are way out in front now. If that graphic that was shown to me heading into week 18 was accurate. And what it made me think and what it made me do was it made me acknowledge, bro, we were really bad this year. Like, it felt bad watching it, but when you think back, and that's what made me ask you guys to guess how many 30-plus point games defensively did we give up, how many 40-plus point games, because it didn't dawn on me until that person brought that to my doorstep to even investigate. We lived it. We watched how bad it was. But watching this shit and then recollecting it and then actually taking a step back and going, damn, we gave up 40 to the Bears. We gave up 40 to the Dolphins. We gave up 40 to Dallas twice. Like, when you start going through it like that and you realize, well, God damn, it's a lot of these. Then you go, okay, well, damn, we gave up 30 plus to Philly twice. We gave up 30 to the Giants, like the Giants of all teams. We gave up 30 points to the Giants. You know, and you going through the Rolodex and you like gave up 30 to the Broncos when the Broncos weren't even scoring points back then. Like, when you start going through the games, you know, you gave up 30 to the Bills, you go, man, this shit is bad, bro. And he's like, yo, that's over with. We're not doing that no more. You're going to get a tough team that competes at a high level. Even if the wins aren't translating right away, you ain't got to worry about watching a product that you won't be proud of. And I think that was the biggest thing that turned us off at the end with Rivera is that, bro, we couldn't even be proud of the shit we was watching on Sundays. Like, losing to the Bears was in itself already inexplicable and bad enough. But to get your ass run out of your own building by the Bears, that's on a whole nother level of incompetence. Losing to the Bears by a late field goal would have felt like a gut punch. Now try losing to the Bears by 20 and giving up 40 to a team that hadn't won in 14 games dating back to last season. Now think about how that shit feels. That's the shit he's like, bro, that's over with. That's music to my ears. Fat American, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, put it simply, if you come here with just a tad of success, you will be worshipped. Just look at how we glorify Gibbs 2.0 and Sean Taylor, Rip King. Yeah, but I already told you what that's a byproduct of. Like the Gibbs 2.0, that's revered because that, first of all, that's the last time we won a playoff game. Acknowledge that, right? And then also, while you're there, acknowledge that's the last time that a coach has led this team to the playoffs in their tenure multiple times. No other coach has done that. Jay Gruden didn't take us to the playoffs more than once. Mike Shanahan didn't take us to the playoffs more than once. Jim Zorn never took us to the playoffs. And Ron Rivera only took us once. So there's a lot that was accomplished in Gibbs 2.0. And then there's the nostalgic portion of that and the nostalgia that exists with Gibbs and what he has meant to this organization. We don't have a single Super Bowl trophy in our cabinet without him. So just the fact that he was back was huge. But then for him to come back and in 4 years take us to the playoffs twice, and really, if, you know, certain things happen in 05, Carlos Rogers catches that pick early, we might be in the NFC Championship game. Why you bullshit? So, yeah, there's a reason for Gibbs 2.0 being revered, but it's also the last time we had any real sustained success. If going to the playoffs 2 out of 3 years is sustained success, which for us it is, and your last playoff victory happened in 05, there's going to be a lot of people that hold that in high regard. We had shit else to bump it. And then Sean Taylor is more along the lines of, look, we saw the greatness unfolding before our very eyes. The league hasn't seen anything like him since. He left a profound impact on everybody, not just this fan base, but everybody around the league. Every Pro Bowl year, they always show the same clip of him blasting Brian Moorman. Like, he left an indelible mark in the league for the short period of time that he was here. And we could all see he was going to be a Hall of Fame player. If injuries weren't something that he had to deal with the rest of his career, if he just played ball, there's no doubt he's a Hall of Famer. And I think that was what was. And also, I always talk about this with this franchise in particular and its fan base. We don't have shit. Who's the next Hall of Fame player going into the Hall of Fame as a Redskin commander? There isn't one. The last guy that we had a hope of went to 49ers, and that's who he's going to go into this to Hall of Fame with. We effed up Champ Bailey. He went as a Denver Bronco. We don't have one. So when you don't have shit, you hold on to the stuff that you do have. And that's part of why people are trying to push London Fletcher into the Hall of Fame. Knock yourself out. But Ryan Kerrigan, people elevated him into this all-world pass rusher. He was all right. But we ain't have shit. So when you ain't got nothing, you hold on. That's why people are so damn protective of Terry. Like, you ain't coming for Terry. Because we ain't got shit. He all we got. So we're going to hold on to the little bit of shit that we got. That needs to change. And that's the whole reason why all of us are so excited about Adam Peters. We want shit in abundance. We sick of having one or two good players. And again, none of them blue chippers, by the way. All right. Like, none of these dudes are all pros. None of these dudes are considered top 3 at their respective positions. They're just really good players in the league. We don't have a guy that is considered 1, 2, or 3 at his position. We want to change that. We want to change that. Miggy, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Miggy writes, with AP in office, I wonder if there's an inner vengeful beef with Giants that sparks a crazy 10 to 15 win streak like other teams done to us at times. Hold on a second. Did I miss something? I hope you're not telling me what I think you just told me without actually telling me. That's what I hope. So I'm about to just check real quick to make sure I didn't miss anything. Because that's the second AP that I got this show. And I brushed off the first one. Okay, no. All right. I ain't tripping. I was making sure we was talking about the same AP. Like, I was like, don't tell me Antonio Pierce is with the Giants now. Just making sure. Anyway, I digress. Let's move on. I don't know what AP you're referring to. I thought you were talking about Antonio Pierce. He's going to get the job in Vegas with the Raiders. I feel confident about that, but we'll see. Oh, you're talking about Adam Peters. Let me go back. You're talking about Adam Peters. I don't see any beef, Adam Peters. I don't see anything, no vengeful beef stirring up and winning a whole bunch of games or anything like. Look, if we win, it's just because we're just better than somebody. And we're due for it. We got to pick a team in the division and just own them. I prefer it to be like Dallas or Philly, but we need to pick a team in the division and be like, hey, we just beat them 8 out of the last 10 times. Like, that's when you're dominant, when you're a really good team, when you make the playoffs every year, you have that kind of dominance over one team. Like Dallas has had over us for the most part. With Dak Prescott, we've beaten Dak Prescott twice in like probably 10, 12 games. Like we don't beat Dak Prescott. So and by virtue of that, they pretty much own us when he plays, is what that means. So we need to be on some shit like that, where we just take a team and say, hey, we're going to beat your ass no matter what. Sort of like what the Giants been doing to us of late. No matter who the hell's that quarterback for us. And it seems like now with them, even though, we've swept them and we've beaten them, but it's always when they got somebody trash at quarterback. And that's why I thought we were going to beat Tommy DeVito. We couldn't even do that shit. Right. Anyway, I digress. I thought your AP was Antonio Pierce. I haven't called or seen anybody call Adam Peters AP, so it threw me for a loop. First AP I was thinking about was Adrian Peterson, and then the next one was Antonio Pierce, and then I was like, oh, dummy, he's talking about Adam Peters. Sorry. I was overthinking it. Video channel, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling it up. Who writes, do you see us hiring an assistant GM? One could already be in the building. I already told you guys, I don't think that he's going to get. If you have watched as much, like, shout out to my girl Condo P, Miss Perry. She sent me so many links recently, content surrounding Adam Peters, where he came from, people having great things to say about him, what the 49ers are going to miss with him being, gone, and all this and that. And I've watched every single one of the links she sent me, and all of them kind of describe him as the brains of that operation from a standpoint of the roster. And the draft in particular, and some of the bigger names that they've acquired via the draft, and his input in all of that, his eye for talent. And one of the names that he kept bringing up was Martin Mayhew. When you would watch him in previous videos from 2-3 years ago, he'd always bring up Martin Mayhew's name. So that leads me to believe that there's a very strong working relationship between the two of them. I won't say he sees him as a mentor, but I think he sees him as a colleague that he does respect greatly. And if I can employ you and give you a job and keep you around, somebody that he trusts in that regard, to me, I think Mayhew ultimately, as long as he's not in a position of power, is harmless. Because he strikes me as one of those dudes that will go along just to get along, right? Like, you can talk him into something, and if that's the consensus, he'll be like, yeah, I could definitely see that, right? Like, he's not going to have a strong opinion one way or the other. I could be wrong about that, and I probably am wrong about that. And to me, I don't want yes men in this building, right? I want other guys here that are going to challenge authority. And like, if you love a player, I need you to stand up and say, no. My area scouts are all over this guy. They have been over this guy for 3 years. We love him. Here's why. And everybody else might think you're crazy, but you got to be willing to stand 10 toes down on what you believe. And I want guys that's going to challenge everybody. That's the healthiest organizations have healthy dialogues where disagreements are normal. That's what I want. But we'll see what happens. I don't think we're hiring an assistant GM. I just think one of the guys already in the building, maybe, I don't know if that role will be filled necessarily or not. If there is, I think that's Mark Mayhew, personally, assistant GM. Zoe Life, No Life. I know y'all don't want to hear that because I don't want to hear that shit either. But I'm just telling y'all, I don't think he's getting rid of Martin Mayhew. If he does, hallelujah. I don't see it happening, though. So just brace yourself for that. Zoe Life, No Life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Zoe Life, No Life. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, for reference, 2017 San Francisco was number 3 in cap space. They bargain shopped in free agency, whiffed on the first 5 picks badly, but late rounds and UDFAs and free agent signings were a hit. So I already told you, when you come into a situation and you're turning over the roster, you can't spend big turning over a roster. He understands that this is not the type of roster that he wants. The guys that are currently here, I already told y'all, a lot of the dudes that were here were Rivera guys, whether they drafted them or they brought them over from Carolina and they just held on to them. Those dudes are gone. Those dudes don't stand a chance. You will see a massive turnover, the likes of which you haven't seen probably since Shanahan and company first got here and literally ran all of the veterans out of the building. And we had to sit through some ugly seasons with all kinds of players you've never heard of since on this football team, especially that 2009 season when Shanahan first got here. It was it 2009 or was it 10? It was 2010. That was the first season I think he was here. That was as nasty a roster as I could recall, that first year Shanahan was here. But they had to turn it over, right? Get those guys in here. They were going to a 3-4 defense from the 4-3 that we had traditionally run, and it was just nasty, right? When you're turning over the roster, it's going to be a little awkward, and there's going to be a lot of change. And if you're turning over the roster, it's going to be a lot of one-year deals, a lot of prove it deals, a lot of going out here, bargain basement shopping. Even though you got all this cap space, there may be one or two big signings, but for the most part, it's going to be a lot of little signings. Guys that Peters knows from San Francisco that he trusts, that can come in here and fill some of those smaller roles that you're not thinking about. So the new special teams linebacker, instead of it being David Mayo or what was the dude's name that was always here? We would never Milo Eifler, and there was one more guy. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. But them dudes was always here. And you're like, bro, what are we doing at linebacker? Well, that's over with. He might have a guy in San Francisco that he thinks is a special teams fiend that he brings over here, or he may draft that guy. Who knows? But the likelihood is they're going to spread that money out over the free agency pool. They're not going to just go out and spend on Mike Evans or, spend on Brian Burns or spend on some other high-priced item, Josh Allen of the Jaguars. It's probably going to be a one-year deal here for a tight end, or a one-year deal here for a linebacker, or a one-year deal here for a guard, or a one-year deal here for a corner. There's going to be a lot of those. Remember, that's what Rivera did when he came here. One-year deal for Ronald Darby, one-year deal for this dude, one-year deal, because you can't fix everything in one offseason. But what you can do is try to establish a culture and start to figure out what the DNA of this team and the identity is going to be. And you can bring in guys that kind of represent that while you're trying to fix this thing on the fly. So I'm not shocked by that. We'll see what happens. Grande Groove, they give it a super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Grande Groove writes, we're not eligible for Hard Knocks, right? We are eligible. We just can take ourselves out of it if we so choose. And most teams don't want to be on Hard Knocks. And I don't see Washington wanting to be on Hard Knocks. When you have a new head coach, you automatically are out of the pool of teams that can be forced to do it. So, the three criteria are you've been on the show within the last decade. So you can opt out if you've been on the show within the last decade. If you got a brand new coach, you can opt out. And if you've made the playoffs once in any of the last 2 years, you can opt out. We don't fit any of the criteria other than we got a new coach. So we can opt out of Hard Knocks, and I don't see how we wouldn't opt out of Hard Knocks. So we won't be up there this year. Now, if we don't win this year, then we're right back in there again as a team that they can choose from. But we'll see what happens this year. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, my guy, Chris. Thank you for all of the support. As always, really, truly do appreciate you. My guy, Chris writes, hey, Lou. Hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise, as always, Chris. Man, I really do truly appreciate you and yours. Thank you so much for the support. All is well on this end. Hope the same can be said on yours. 2 questions. 1, what would you consider successful for Peters after 5-year contract expires? Super Bowl win, consistent playoffs, etc. Question 2, what do you think the new head coach can do to ensure this team is motivated every game? So the first question is, what is a successful initial contract for Adam Peters? I think that if this team makes the playoffs by year 2 or 3 of his tenure, I would consider that a success. We need to be pushing for the playoffs. If we don't make it in year 2, we need to be pushing for the playoffs in year 2. And then you can see it coming in year 3, kind of like what the Lions just did. If you think about the 49ers and what they did, it was the same way. They pushed for the playoffs, I think, in that second year. And that third year, they made a run all the way to the Super Bowl. Right? You look at what the Lions are doing right now. I think that's the more realistic timeline. Too many people are caught up and hung up on what the Texans just did. And I'm like, y'all are really, really brainwashing yourself into thinking that's the norm. It's not. You hope that you find a good quarterback. They might have found the greatest rookie season quarterback we've ever seen. Like what CJ Stroud just turned in, that might be the greatest rookie season we've ever seen from an NFL quarterback. What he's just done. And he's not even done yet. He's going to the divisional round of the postseason. Like, understand what you're asking for. And I keep telling them, even that Houston situation wasn't built overnight. You just see the shiny new objects that got them to where they are in head coach DeMeco Ryans and quarterback CJ Stroud. You don't see all of the rest of the shit that they went through to get to that point. But again, fans don't want to hear that shit. They don't want to hear the reality of the situation. They just want results. We've been losing for so long. And some of y'all just don't understand how this works. You think because you've been losing for so long that entitles you to something. That don't entitle you to shit, but starting over again. That's all that losing does, is ensure that you're going to start over again and try again. But just because you've lost for the better part of a quarter of a century doesn't mean, well, we got to win in this first year with this new GM. I'm tired of losing. Yeah, we all tired of losing, but it's a process. You want a lightning in a bottle 11-6 and then go back to being mediocre as hell next year at 7-10? Or you want to, when you finally start winning, this is an every year thing and we're not going back to losing no more? Is that what you want? Sustained success. Being a triple P. That's what I want. I can't speak for anybody out there. And if I got to wait to year 3 to get that, so be it. We've been losing this long. 2 more years ain't going to kill me to then enjoy this type of success that I want, that is going to give us the best shot to win a Super Bowl. I've done make the playoffs for 1 year and then go back to being mediocre or trash the next year. I've done that so many times. It make your damn head spin. I'm sick of that shit. I'm trying to have sustained success. The type that we had when we were in our glory years. The type that warrants the type of expectations that exist in Dallas and Philadelphia. I want us to have those type of expectations to where I'm never going to be okay with firing a coach unless he does something so egregious. I'm never going to be in the business of firing a guy that just took me to the Super Bowl and then started the season off 10-1. I don't give a shit how badly we finish. There's got to be a way that we can salvage this. I'm never going to be that guy. But I will tell you, winning 12 games 3 years in a row, when the expectation is Super Bowl and not getting out of the first round 2 of those 3 years, and then, losing in the divisional round last year in a game that you clearly seem like the better team. Because I'm just going to be honest with you. Dallas outplayed San Francisco in that divisional round game last year. Should have beat them. But because they're Dallas and Dak Prescott is not a playoff quarterback, they lost. And you can talk about being poorly coached, this, that, and the third, whatever. Still lost. Still same results. So I get that. But I know what I want. I can't speak for anybody else out there. I know what I want. I want a bona fide, legit winner where year in, year out, you start talking about the playoffs and you're like, well, we know Washington going to be in the mix. That's what I want. I don't want to be a part of the group that, hey, 6 teams that ain't make the playoffs last year going to make the playoffs this year. I don't want to be part of the team cycling in and out of that conversation. I want to be at the top with the rest of those teams that always find themselves in the postseason no matter what. Times change, years change, rules change, but the Chiefs being in the playoffs don't. The Ravens being in the playoffs for the most part, barring Lamar Jackson being injured, don't. Packers in the playoffs rarely changes. San Francisco 49ers in the playoff rarely changes. I want to be a part of that. Buffalo Bills. You know what's interesting? Nobody brought this up. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the only team in the NFC that have gone to the playoffs 4 years in a row. Let that sink in. Only team. So, again, I'm trying to get into that mix. If waiting another 2 years is what I got to do to get there, sign me up. But I think a successful first 5 years for him would entail playoffs no worse than after the third season, right? I would really like to be threatening the playoffs in year 2, but making it isn't obligatory in year 2, but definitely year 3. We need to be talking about something in year 3 for sure. And then after that, I'm ready to go every year. Like, so in his first 5 years, I think no less than 2 of the 5 years need to be playoff years. I would prefer 3 of the 5 years to be playoff years, to be honest with you. And there needs to be at least 2 playoff victories in there. You probably, that first year, you're just happy to be there. You might not win nothing. But that second time, hey, win a game. The next year, win a game, and then maybe win another game. But if not, you've at least been to the divisional round each of the last 2 years, or you've been to the divisional round 2 out of the last 3 years. And then you try to make a power move from there, right? So that, to me, that would be success, right? Is we trending in the right direction. Been to the playoffs, won a game in the playoffs, been this close to the NFC Championship game. I'd love to say we've played in one already. It'd be nice to, but threatening to make the NFC Championship game at least once would be a successful run for me with him. So 3 out of the 5 years playoffs, bare minimum 2, and also having won at least one playoff game. Hey, look, you want to have the quickest route to the NFC Championship game, be the number 1 seed, and then win one playoff game, and you're already in the championship game, whatever the case may be. Either play in or threaten to be in the NFC Championship game. Then you said, what do you think the new head coach can do to ensure that the team is motivated every game? I mean, honestly, I don't think that's something that the next head coach should have to do every single week. The best motivation is being prepared. If you're prepared for the opponent, you go in the game confident every week. It's when the game plan is janky and you're having little to no success, and I don't believe in what you're telling me to do, that's when the shit starts to fall apart. Why do you think this season went so poorly? Because it's been 4 years of the same shit with Rivera, and the players started to say to themselves, A, he's not going to be here next year, and B, this shit ain't working. This whole time he keeps telling us, if the shit don't work, they ask us to do it, and the shit don't work the way they asked us, they're going to fall on the sword. But yet they still be blaming some of the players for the shit that's going on. And I just make it make sense. If you're prepared and you know the shit that they're coaching you works because you've seen it work, that's all the confidence you need on a weekly basis. I think also what helps with a coach is establishing an identity. For instance, and I like going back to this Detroit well, it's easy. Dan Campbell established to his team fairly quickly in his tenure, we're going to be aggressive. And we're always going to err on the side of being aggressive. And sometimes it's going to work. Sometimes it won't. But what we won't do is shy away from being who we are. And if we win doing it this way, great. Everybody will compliment us, tell us how great we are. If we don't win doing it this way, we're going to be told that we're dumb, we're too aggressive, etc. And we got to be ready for it either way. But what we're not going to do is shy away from the moment. When that 4th down comes, we're going for it. When that chance to go for 2 in the win comes, we're going for it. And it ain't even going to be a second thought, and it ain't going to be any hesitation. Y'all know what it is. When's the last time? And I would like somebody to find this information out for me. Like, I actually do want to know. And if somebody doesn't figure it out, I'm going to look it up myself. When's the last time Washington had a fake punt? Fake punt, fake field goal, doesn't matter. Last time. Got to be the Gruden era, because there once upon a time was a stretch where Tressway would actually throw the football on fake punts. So I know it's been done recently. I just don't think we did one, not a single one with Rivera. You probably got to go back to Danny Smith as our special teams coordinator before he left for Pittsburgh. That's probably how far back you got to go. So we're probably talking about 6-7 years ago. Easy is what I'm thinking. Probably had a fake punt, attempted fake punt since probably about 2017 is my guess. 18, 17, somewhere in there. Gruden was definitely still here. I know that much. That's a shame, bro. I mean, that tells you just how poorly coached and how, the lack of preparation. We never saw anything in a special teams unit that we were playing against that we could take advantage of. We never saw it. Not one time where we said, hey, here's what they're doing, coach. They're overcommitting on this left side. We can definitely throw the football here. They're not even looking for it. Or, coach, they're bailing out quick. As soon as the punter gets the ball in his hands, they're turning and running. We can fake this thing right inside to the personal protector, and he can run for this first down. We ain't seen that one time on film, not once. You got to be shitting me, bro. You can't tell me that it ain't been one special teams unit that's had a weakness that we couldn't have tried to exploit by being aggressive on a 4th and 3 or a 4th and 2. Or hell, a 4th and 7. Jay used to do this shit. It'd be like 4th and 8, and Jay will have Tress throw a 15-yard pass. And he would complete the bitch. I watched teams like Detroit. They rolling the dice. First game of the season. Out of the gate against Kansas City on the road. They dropping a banner. And they go in there and they fake a punt. You don't think that sets the tone for the season? Not only do they convert, they score a touchdown on that drive and they go on to win the ball game. You don't think that shit? Like, again, when Bad Dog would talk about the Giants season, he said we set the tone in week 1. Brian Daboll came in the first game, we went for 2. Down 20-19 with a chance to tie with an extra point and go to overtime. He went for 2 and we got it and we won. And that set the tone for the entire season. He wasn't the same guy this year, though. And Bad Dog complained about it. Where was the guy that I saw last year that was aggressive? There needs to be a messaging there that's consistent with the players so they know. I don't care if we 1-7 or we 7-1. We're going to be the same. We're going to be aggressive. I think that's important too, right? Players understanding this is how we operate, no matter what. That's what an identity is. No matter what's going on, this is who we going to be. That's what an identity is. No matter the circumstances, no matter the environment, no matter the situation, we're going to be who we are. And we're going to be unapologetic about it. That's how you get your players to be consistent and play hard and be motivated, is prepare them so that they feel confident in what they're going out and executing, and then deliver a clear message that everybody can understand. This is who we are. And this is how we operate. And that's what Adam Peters kind of said today. Like, look, no matter what's going on, we're going to play hard. And you're going to see the best from us, no matter what. I can ensure that. So, yeah, we'll see. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB as always. And thank you for gifting 5 memberships. Y'all know how it is. Shout out to my guy, Chris. Double up. Thank you for doubling up and being the guy that you have always been here supporting the Louie T Network. Thank you for your generosity in gifting 5 memberships. Trevor Patch, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Lou, no, this is absolutely not the situation to interview last. Harris is putting an offer in front of the first head coach that wows him because they have alternatives, and he isn't going to wait like Ron did for EB and miss out. I agree with that. I disagree. I think I said agree. I disagree with that. I think that, first of all, I don't think he's going to be impulsive and put the offer sheet in front of the first candidate that he speaks to. I think they're going to go through this process. As I've mentioned to you, there are a lot of really qualified candidates this cycle, and I think everybody's got their own agenda. Everybody's looking for a specific coach. You know, not everybody's looking for Ben Johnson. Not everybody's looking for Bobby Slowik. Some people are like, no, I want Mike Vrabel. That's the guy that I want. He's first on our list. Some people are like, I want Belichick. He's the guy that I want. He's the guy that's first on our list. Some people looking at Harbaugh. He's the guy I want. That's the guy first on our list. Not everybody's after Ben Johnson, right? And so the question is, if you think Ben Johnson is the guy, you're going to wait. It's nothing wrong with taking these other interviews. And if somebody gets antsy and somebody's offered them a job and one of these candidates gets antsy and says, hey, I can't wait on Washington, I got to take this. Look, generally what we see with these coaches is it's a domino effect. So if, for instance, I'll give you an example. Last year, I don't think we really started to see the hires start to, percolate. I could be wrong about this, but my guess is you didn't really start to see the hires percolate until Sean Payton made his decision. He was one of the guys that was highly sought after last year. Teams were courting him. Denver seemed to be the front runner all along with that situation, but he was a guy that a lot of teams wanted to talk to, and until he made his decision, you weren't going to hire anybody else. If he gave you an interview, you felt good about it, you weren't going to hire somebody else until he made a decision. I kind of think that's where we are with this one. Like, the Patriots are like, I don't need to talk to nobody else. I already know the guy that I want. So we're going to go ahead and hire Gerard Mayo. I don't need to wait. I know this is the guy I want. But then you look at other teams like the Falcons. They've already interviewed Jim Harbaugh. They've already interviewed Bill Belichick. Does that sound like a team that's interested in a Ben Johnson necessarily? Like, waiting on, like, they look like they want a veteran. Like, their mindset is, we did the young up and coming offensive minded guy and it didn't work in Arthur Smith. So we going in a different direction. Generally, that's how it goes, right? Is you go from one end of the spectrum to the other. We're case in point, right? So we went from Shanahan to Jay Gruden. Offensive minded because they were trying to resurrect Robert Griffin III's career, and it didn't happen. That's why you went to another offensive minded guy. Jay was here for 6 years, and offensively we were good. Defense sucked every year. We had no defensive backbone. We had no identity defensively. And then to make matters worse, we had no discipline as a team collectively. Purple nurples and wet willies were being given out to the coach. The practice habits were terrible. We heard multiple players complain about it. And so it was called Club J for a reason. Right? So after that, what do we all say as fans? Oh, man, we need a guy that comes in here and is a stickler for defense, but specifically for discipline. Like, even if he's an offensive-minded dude like Marty was, but he was, a stickler for discipline and being a certain way, we'll take that. But this next dude got to come in here and be somewhat of a hard ass. So Ron Rivera fit that DNA profile. Defensive guy, was known for being disciplined and well respected around the league. We thought we were coming up. Shit. Ron Rivera chose us. How lucky are we? We didn't think we could get anybody after the debacle that was Jay Gruden and Bruce Allen and the shit show that was Washington. We didn't think we could get anybody here. And then Ron Rivera chose us? What? We felt lucky. Because we wanted the other end of the spectrum. Now Ron's gone, and what do we want? We want an offensive-minded guy. We don't want another defensive guy, right? But the defensive guy may be what we need. But we want to go to the other end of the spectrum. We want an offensive guy to marry with the young quarterback that we're probably going to draft, and et cetera, right? Because the offense has been terrible, and you don't want to keep changing coordinators. If you find a young quarterback, you want to be able to say, hey, you don't have to worry about learning 16 different offenses. You're going to be rolling with this head coach for the next 12 to 15 years. So in saying that, I think you're willing to wait on Ben Johnson if that's the guy that you covet. And what you'll see happen is that the domino won't fall. The dominoes won't start to fall until Ben Johnson is Carolina's first option. So Carolina's waiting. They're not going to just hire somebody. They're going to wait on Ben Johnson. Washington ain't hiring anybody. They're going to wait on Ben Johnson. Right? If you're not worried about Ben Johnson, then you already going to hire somebody. Right? And there's just one less coach out there. But we're not in the Jim Harbaugh nor the Bill Belichick sweepstakes. We're not in those conversations. So if they get hired somewhere else, we don't care about that. But I can tell you this right now, if Raheem Morris interviews for this job and he likes this opportunity and he walks away from that interview feeling really good about the job and he interviews somewhere else and they offer him the job, but he doesn't really love that, particular opportunity, but he'll take it if he can't get the job in Washington, you don't think he's going to wait first? Like, I know it sucks to not be the first candidate somewhere or the first choice. But if you're a team and you love Raheem Morris and he knocked your interview out of the water and you want him bad, but he clearly has somebody else in mind first before you, you can either take that personal and move on to the next candidate, or you can say, hey, we're going to wait to see how this thing plays out. If Washington chooses somebody else, then Raheem's coming our way and we really like him. You'll wait. But that's how this goes. If we interview 5 candidates and they all want the job, and we like, hey, y'all, we just going to interview Ben Johnson first, and we going to circle back to y'all. If he doesn't knock our socks off, we coming back to one of y'all. You don't think they're going to wait? Unless a team puts the pressure on them and says, hey, I ain't got time to wait. Either you take our job or we going to the next dude. That ain't usually how it go, though. If you really like that candidate, you'll wait for him. Even if he makes it abundantly clear, hey, you want first on the list. I'd rather would have had that job, but they didn't choose me. So now I'm choosing you. That's cool. Ain't no skin off my back. I still think you were the best candidate that we interviewed, and we want you here. If you want to be here, let's do it. I think going last here, going first would be just as good. I don't think that hurts you. Because if you knock it out of the park and you were their guy to begin with, all you're doing is confirming what they already thought anyway. Oh, this is the guy. But if they go through all the interviews and somebody else knocks their socks off or somebody else wows them through the process, then, hey, you need to step your game up and you need to come in here and you need to show us why you should be the coach over this dude. Or they can go through the process and say, hey, ain't none of these dudes hitting on shit. We need Ben to come in here and kill it. So we are that much more sure about what we're doing because ain't none of these dudes, that move the needle for us necessarily. You just don't know. Either way, trust me, Of all the things you've seen from Josh Harris, the thing you've seen the most has been patience. Even in this process, I know it went very quickly, but you knew he was working behind the scenes to make this happen. Like, don't think for 1 second that he wasn't already in communication. Like, the reason they even went and got Bob Myers was because they were pursuing Adam Peters. And he did know that he would act as a great liaison and helping get the deal done. I mean, he didn't put that advisory committee together for no reason. And everybody has connected the dots already. The reason that Rick Spielman is here is because of his connection to his brother, and who works for the Detroit Lions as a special advisor to the owner, right? And he knows that, hey, my brother has a really good relationship with Ben Johnson, and therefore he probably has a working relationship with Ben Johnson, has met him before. If not, it can't hurt that one of your guys is my brother. So he's exhibited patience at the highest levels since taking over this team. I don't see him rushing the process. He was able to take his time with the GM situation because he was able to start that process during the regular season. Couldn't start the head coaching process during the regular season because you still had your head coach. So that's tampering, and can't interview these dudes anyway. So you couldn't start that process. So I think he's going to take his time with this one. So I think it's going to work out regardless. He ain't going to just hire the first guy that wows him in one of these interviews. And don't forget, Adam Peters is a huge part of this process now too. XX Retro XX. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for the support. XX Retro XX. Freddie Lee, been a member for 25 months. Who writes, let's celebrate. A new era is unfolding in front of us. We are watching the beginning of a new dynasty unfolding in front of our eyes. Celebrate. I hope that's the case. I know I'm excited about what all of this could mean for us and the new chapter that we're embarking upon, but I also still need to see it. Right? I still need to see. That ain't gonna stop me from talking shit, first and foremost. Like, that ain't gonna stop me from talking my talk. But for me to actually, like, know in my heart of hearts, like, I'm not gonna talk cold hard cash and I don't believe it. When I talk about going 12-5, that's because I believe we can go 12-5, not because I'm a homer and I can't pick us to lose more than 5 or 6 games every year. That's not true. That's false. I actually believe we can win 11 or 12 games. That's why I picked the record that I picked. In order for me to be that bullish, I'm going to need to see the direction that we're going in. You can feel it as a fan. If you've ever been a part, and this isn't just solely tied to football. If you've ever been a fan of a team and you've watched them grow and you've seen them come from the bottom up and you watch them elevate in confidence and status, you know what it looks like. You know what it feels like as a fan. You know what it feels like when you go, hey, we on the way. You can see it. You can feel it. I need to feel that way. But again, as I've said throughout this process, this is the first step. Getting a general manager that is boots on the ground, high-level talent evaluator, cut his teeth in the game by being one of the best in the business at identifying talent, finding the 4th and the 5th and the 6th and the 7th round in the undrafted gems. Anybody can hit in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd round. Anybody can hit in the first 2 days. where the real differentiator, and for me, the third round is an extension. Anybody can hit in first or second round. The real damage is done to me starting in the third round. That's when we start to separate the real GMs and the real talent evaluators and the real teams that are putting together serious rosters and the pretenders, because anybody can hit in the first 2 rounds. That's easy. I mean, shit, we haven't done it, which is why we're a terrible franchise, but anybody can hit in the first and second round. Show me the team that's consistently hitting in rounds 3 through 7 and also hitting the occasional undrafted dude. Show me that roster and I'll show you a winner, because that's where you build your team at. You only have but so many first and second round picks. You got a bunch of guys that were drafted in rounds 3 through 7 on your roster and undrafted. A bunch of those guys should exist. That's where the meat and potatoes of your roster come from. If you ain't hitting in those rounds, your roster is trash. So this is the first step in that block, that building block that I talk about, this foundation that we're trying to build. This is the first block. This is the first brick. Trevor Patch, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Trev writes, double up, let me double you up. Writes, Commander fans, we are going wall to wall. Louie T, pause. Look, man, I don't know if I said that or not. You might be attributing a quote to me that I didn't say, or maybe I did say the shit and just don't remember. Normally, I remember the shit that I say. I don't remember saying that, but I could have. I say a lot of shit. At the end of the day, I'm going to tell you this right now. It can't be any worse than it's been for the last 25 years. Can't be any worse. It can only be better. You can only equal how poorly we've fared over the last 25 years. Never won more than 10 games. Never won the division in back-to-back years. Never been to the playoffs in back-to-back years. Only had a winning record in back-to-back years once, and that was 9-7 and 8-7-1. And you still didn't make the playoffs in those 2 years, just one of those 2 years. Haven't won 11 or more games since 1990. You can't be any more inept than we've been in the last quarter of a century. So it can't be any worse. It can only be better. I expect it to be. That's what I'm expecting. But I'm an optimist. Fat American, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Fat American, double up, thank you for doubling up. Who writes, tell Brad Woodward this ain't a movie, LOL. Brad knows that. He was just looking for a little bit more. You can't be mad at Brad for that. He wanted a little bit more than Adam was going to give him. That's all. He's like, look, get rid of the cards. Read from the heart. Like, that's what he was looking for. I'm not mad at him for that. I think, Brad might have been expecting a little too much, but that's what Brad was looking for. Brad can look for that if he wants. Lang Hughes, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, report saying Ben Johnson is 1A. Think it's similar to AP in my opinion. I think so too. I think that's what it is. That Ben Johnson is 1A, and I don't know if there's a 1B right now or 1C, but he's out, and I think I said this at the top of the show. He's out in front of the rest of the pack, but I don't think it's as clear of a lead and as definitive as it was for GM. Felt like they were going through the motions just to get to Adam Peters with the GM search. They knew what they wanted, which is why they put together the advisory board but if we go with that same premise, if you put together an advisory board, an advisory committee, as they called it, and that committee consists of 2 people that you brought in from outside of the organization, one was designed to get you Adam Peters and the other was designed to get you Ben Johnson, then I would say that those 2 are clear front runners. Wouldn't you say? If that's why you put together this advisory committee, if that's what it turned out to be, that you were targeting those two individuals in particular, and those two guys you felt like could help you close the deal, then yeah, I'd say that there's nothing to talk about. He's clearly out in front of the rest of the head coaching candidates. If the Peter situation is something that we can take from and use it as an example, then it's not even close. That's who they want. And I think that's who they're ultimately going to go after and get. But again, we'll find out where Ben Johnson's headed, because I wouldn't go anywhere near Carolina's job. I don't care how much money you offering me. We're going to find out what Ben Johnson's all about. Because if it's all about the dollar bill, y'all, we can't compete with Carolina. We can't compete. X Retro XX. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes? Hey, Louie. If we do get Caleb, how do you handle the number 13 with Forbes? I don't think Forbes gives it up. I mean, that's a conversation for them to have. I mean, clearly Caleb would be coming in. He's already been making hella money in college football. We've seen the Dr. Pepper commercials. We know the dude. We've seen the Heisman Trophy commercials that he's already in. We know the dude is making money already. He's making bank. Okay. So he's going to come in here. He's going to sign a lucrative deal to be the number 1 overall pick. And he's going to have plenty of money. And Forbes is a first-round pick. He's got plenty of money too. And so money may not be the object there. Forbes might just want to be 13. If Caleb Williams wants it bad enough, he'll figure out a way to make it happen. The team could step in, and you never want to do this. But if Caleb wants to make a big stink about it, the team could step in and be like, hey, Forbes, you got to get this shit up, bro. But normally, if you walk into a situation as a rookie and somebody that obviously has seniority over you, which is why you can't get the number, has the number, and they don't want to give it up, it ain't shit you can do about it. You just got to find another number. So find something else that matters to you. That's an interesting dynamic, not something I would worry about too much until we get there. And I'm pretty sure if 13 means that much to you and you're Forbes and you're not giving the shit up, then Caleb Williams is going to have to find something else. Right? It's real simple. But anyway, Fat American, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Fat American writes, over here thinking this, remember the Titans or something. You still talking about that? Hey, you got to let that go, man. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, also, Lou, hope the fam is well. Likewise. Could we get a breakdown of the 49ers draft classes from 2017 to 23? That would be fire content. We most certainly can do that. I have no issues doing that. Matter of fact, we'll do that on Thursday. When we go live Thursday night, I'll have those 6 draft classes with 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23. 7 draft classes. Really, 23 you can't really fairly assess. So you're really looking at the previous 6 from 17 to 22. And look at what they've done and the success that he's had. And I'm pretty sure you'll see that the hits have been plentiful and impactful, and you'll feel really good because the 49ers have one of the best rosters in football for a reason. Not because they went in free agency and signed a bunch of guys. They've supplemented their roster with guys like Javon Hargraves and Christian McCaffrey via trade and, you know, guys like that, right? Randy Gregory, signing him. But for the most part, a lot of those players are homegrown product. Traded for Chase Young. Clearly we are aware, but a lot of those dudes are homegrown product. So, sneakers forever. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Hey, Lou, are we giving up on Hal? Can't give up on him. It's his first year. And the Bears are giving Fields multiple years. Why not Sam? Because Sam wasn't drafted in the first round. That's why. You're not tied to a 5th round pick. This was made abundantly clear, and I said this as clear as day. I hope Sam understands this is an opportunity of a lifetime he's being given this year that most fifth-round picks don't get. He's being given essentially the opportunity to be the unquestioned starter. There was never really a quarterback competition in the offseason. It was clearly his job from the jump. He did nothing to dissuade them from making him the starter. He started every preseason game. It was never in question or in doubt whether he'd be the guy or not. And I said, if this goes off the rails, you got to make sure that you do everything in your power to prove to the next people that come in here that you already got a quarterback here. You don't need to look any further. And the way you do that is to put yourself in a position where you draft in 16th or 17th or 18th in the league because you played well and it resulted in wins. May not have been enough to get you to the playoffs, but it was enough to get Ronald fired and for you to say, hey, I'm good. You don't need another quarterback. By you playing the way that you played and unfortunately allowing the team to be in a position to draft second overall, you've essentially dug your own grave. Because if we were drafting ninth instead of second, just win 2 more games. We drafted ninth instead of second, he's probably safe. More likely than not, we won't get a quarterback in this draft, and they'll have no choice but to run it back with Sam. We're drafting second, and we're in a position to get a quarterback. Ain't no way you passing up that opportunity. Sorry. King of the Bluegrass. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. King of the Bluegrass writes, John Fox works for the Lions as a defensive consultant. Oh, I wonder how long he's been doing that for. I still wouldn't hire his ass. But that makes it a lot more of a realistic possibility if there's a relationship there between the two of them. That makes it a lot more of a reality that it could happen. I still don't think you bring John Fox with you. I still think you go get a defensive backs coach, a linebackers coach, a defensive line coach, and make him your coordinator if you feel good about that guy, obviously. But, whatever he's comfortable with, cool. John Fox was a really good defensive guy when he was coaching in the NFL. But, again, when's his last gig been? 2011? 20 had to be somewhere in there. When did Peyton Manning go to Denver? 2013, right? 2012, they sucked. That's how they got luck. He went to the Broncos the next year in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. And I thought it was earlier than that because I thought we tried to get him. Shanahan tried to get him, and he wouldn't come to Washington. But they didn't have luck all of the 11 season or Manning all of the 11 season, which is what prompted them to get the number 1 overall pick and end up with Andrew Luck. So it had to be 13. It had to be 2012 might have been his first year in Denver, man. Maybe. Then, because I think they set the record in the NFL for the most yards and points and all that good stuff in 13 and got run by the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. And then 14, they came back. And or was it 14? Seattle went to the Super Bowl for the first time in 2013. I got that right. That was the 13th season. Ran the shit out of the Broncos. Went back the next year, lost to New England. So they lost to New England. I think they might have lost to the Colts, did the Broncos in the playoffs. Either way, New England went to the Super Bowl in 14 and beat Seattle. And then they went to the Super Bowl and won in 15. And Manning was done at that point. So I think that's how the timeline went. Anyway, needless to say, we talking about 2011 is the last time John Fox was actually on the sidelines, I think, in the NFL. What has he been doing this whole time? He hasn't been a defensive consultant for the Lions for the last 14 years, 13 years, 12 years, however long he's been out of the league as a coach. I'd love to know what he's been doing this entire time. He might have just started being a defensive consultant 3 years ago in Detroit when Dan Campbell got there, for all we know. I'm actually interested to know. If I don't find out before this is over, I'm going to go look it up myself. Trevor Patch, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Trev writes, stop the cap, Lou. How did that learn and coach defense work for Matt Patricia? But see, this is the problem with all of the dudes that learn and inherit the Patriot way. They all left New England entitled, right? I came from New England. This is how you're supposed to do it. It works. So just trust me, shut up, and do what I tell you to do, and it's going to work. Every single dude that leaves New England leaves with that mentality, whether it's Charlie Weiss or it's Bill O'Brien or it's Josh McDaniels or it's Matt Patricia. That's how they operate. We had success. We know what we're doing. This is how we're going to do it. And it don't work like that. There was a quote that Chris Collinsworth said that somebody's dad, I can't remember what game I was watching. Somebody's dad was a coach. And they said that players don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. That shit is so true. You can be the best X's and O's coach in the league, but if you're not relatable, if you don't get your players, it doesn't matter how much you know. Unless you're Bill Belichick. And even Belichick had a relationship with his players. And they all talk about it. The ones that were there when they were successful. They all talk about him with a lot of praise, effusive praise. But at the end of the day, learning from someone, implementing some of the things that they've done, taking into consideration, what they had to go through and all of that, and seeing that firsthand and adapting some of that into your style of coaching is one thing. It's another thing to try to take that entire blueprint and ask players to not question you at all. Just do what I tell you to do because this is what they do in New England, and we know the shit works there. It's totally different. So I think it's totally different. Be right. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, 3 words I never want to hear again: culture, buffalo nickel, and positional flex. These words need to be stricken from the commander's log. Shaking my head. I don't think you're going to hear that with this group. You may hear some form of positional flex, but I don't know. They may have a different phrase for it. I would hope. I really don't want to hear positional flex again. But you're going to hear that when the draft comes, guys that can play multiple positions, and you'll hear the word versatility. I prefer that word over positional flex at this point. Oh, he's versatile. He can play multiple positions. That's how I'm going to say it. Because I don't want to hear I don't want to hear positional flex ever again either. Sneakers forever. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes? Hi, Lou again. What's going on? Says if we hire Ben Johnson and takes Brian Daboll not calling plays, would you be disappointed? So if he ends up being a coach here and he decides not to call the plays, would I be disappointed? No, if that's what he's most comfortable doing, I would hope that he would have say-so on what's going on offensively, and the person that he's hiring thinks like he does. But part of the reason you're bringing Ben Johnson here is to call plays. So yes, I think I would be just a tad bit disappointed because that's part of the allure of Ben Johnson. If he comes in here and is like, yeah, I don't want to call plays, but I got a dude that I like that I think you'll like, then you're just better off hiring a guy that you think is a great leader. Because part of the allure of Ben Johnson is, hey, we getting his ability to call plays. So, yeah, I would be disappointed. I changed my mind. The answer is yes, I'd be disappointed in that. I don't think they would hire him, though, if that's what he wanted to do. You know, I don't think they would hire him. He'd have to call plays here. And, again, I've made this abundantly clear. Most offensive play callers want to call plays. That's fun for them. That's the part of the job that gives them the most enjoyment. They're not giving that up if they don't have to. I haven't met one offensive play caller that has come into a situation in his first job. Now, you come around your second time, you may be like, all right, one of the things I want to do is I want to delegate. I want to be more hands-on all around the facility in all of these different meetings. I can't do that if I'm coaching up the offense and calling the plays. So I'm going to let somebody else do that this time. That's one thing. It's a totally different animal when it's your first time. No, I've never seen an offensive play caller get his first job and say, I'm not calling plays. I've never seen that. Never. So I don't expect that. Because and you brought up Brian Daboll. I don't know if he was calling the plays last year or not, his first year in New York. I don't know. I'm not sure. You might be onto something there with him. Because I think they had Mike Kafka or somebody calling the plays. But I think Daboll was heavily involved in that shit last year. Like how Eric Bieniemy was calling the plays in the Patrick Mahomes helmet, but Andy Reid had his fingerprints all over that shit. I think it was the same way with the Giants last year. He might not have been calling the plays into the helmet of Daniel Jones, but his fingerprints were all over what they were doing offensively. So I just can't see it. Mike Tiz, stand up. You are the newest member of the MOBB mob. Y'all know what to do. Show Mike Tiz some love. Welcome him with open arms. Mike Tiz, welcome to the squad. Glad to have you. Breadman, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. So we just going to remove the J. We just Breadman now. Word. Lou, what are they waiting on to take EB behind the woodshed and take him out of his misery? Because the new coach might come in here and decide that, remember, it's no guarantee that we're hiring a offensive-minded guy. The next coach that comes in here could be Raheem Morris, and he could be like, yo, I want Eric Bieniemy to be my next head coach or my next offensive coordinator. I actually like what he did last year. You don't know. So you're just going to wait to see what actually transpires, and then you go from there. I don't think he's going to be here when it's all said and done. I don't see him being here. But there's no rush to all of this. There's no rush. You got plenty of time. Don't worry, guys. Don't worry. Brad Woodward, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes? Copy. Too early to judge. It just felt like nervous energy instead of confidence. Thanks for your channel. There ain't no worries, Brad. He might have been nervous, you know. This is a big step he's taking. He's becoming his own man in the NFL. He's waited a long time for this, Brad. He's been in the NFL. I just told you his first year in the NFL was 2003. It's 2024. Man's been in the league over 2 decades, and he's finally getting his opportunity to be his own man. Yeah, he's probably a little nervous up there. Just a tad bit. That's human nature, though. That's natural to be nervous. I don't care how often you speak in front of crowds, you're going to get nervous. It's just part of being, human nature. But yeah, I think he's going to be fine. I'm not worried about anything. Neither should you. Nate Matt, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Nate writes, Sam deserves another shot. He's a warrior and a gunslinger. Draft Marvin Harrison Jr. Thoughts? You know how I feel about Sam, and I think Sam can play in this league. But what happened to Sam last year is what happens to a lot of quarterbacks in this league, in which they are either poorly coached or they are put into a situation with inferior parts, and the end result is them losing their confidence. And the part that I was looking for from Sam was just show me a pulse. Give me a reason to believe. And there would be these moments like the first half of the San Francisco game where you go, hey, wait a minute. He just undertaken that bitch. He just stuck his hand through the dirt. He's not dead yet. And in the second half, he'd implode. And you go, oh, shit. Yeah, go ahead and finish putting the rest of the dirt on him. And it's those moments where you go, bro, you can't keep doing this. For every good moment can't be 2 bad ones. That's what happened on the back end of the season. For every good moment, there was 2 to 3 bad ones that were waiting right around the corner. You couldn't enjoy that success for long. That Rams game, I told the mob, and the mob can back me up on this. We were getting shut out of that game at the time. I think it was 20-0. I said, hey, mob, we going down. We scoring a touchdown. Sam taking us on a touchdown drive. We about to score. And everybody in the comments was like, yo, you tripping. He been awful this game. We ain't doing shit. And what did we do? We went right down the field. He throws a dime to Curtis Samuel, and it's 20-7. I said, I told y'all. And if we get a stop, he going in and he going to do it again. We about to be back in this game. And then he throws the pick. And then he throws another pick. And then you're like, bro, I can't. And, the part that sucked about some of the turnovers was like, he's not getting any help from his players, but still, you got a wide open running back in the flats, and you try to throw back across your body to Terry, and it's not an accurate ball. It tips off his hands and right to the defender. That's your fault. And so, look, as much as I want Sam to get another opportunity, I already know how this works. And I've already said, you can't be this high in the draft and not take a quarterback. You just can't. That's just the way it is. You don't know when you're going to be here again. And if the group is a group that you believe in, and one of these players you truly do believe in, get him. Because you don't know when you're going to get in this, you're going to be in this position again. Big Money Sonny, been a member for 28 months. Who writes, I'm sorry, Lou. I like Newports. I can't with you, man. Breadman, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, 6 years ago, fake punt leads to 40-yard touchdown against the Saints. What'd I tell y'all? Say it had to be 6-7 years ago because Jay Gruden was here. That's ridiculous. We haven't run a fake. Let that shit sink in. How much football you've watched, and think about all the fakes you've seen, and we haven't done it once in 6 years. So there's no advantage that you can gain from running a fake at any point. There's nothing that we can do. Either we got to score on offense or we got to punt and play defense. We can't do nothing extra. No fake field goal, no fake punt, nothing. Okay. I mean, if that ain't like Another reason that you should be looking at Ben Johnson and saying, hey, because you know he's taking notes from what he's seen from Dan Campbell, and don't think that hasn't rubbed off on him. Now, he might not be nearly as aggressive as Dan Campbell, and that's fine, but he's going to be more aggressive. If he went into that thing meek, he's going to leave that situation a lot more aggressive than when he came in. If he went in there already having an aggressive mindset, he's going to leave even more aggressive because of being with Dan Campbell these last 3 years. Miggy, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, is there still a role for that committee? GM is here. I think there's still going to be advisors to the head coach search. But now that they've gotten the GM, I think the GM now takes kind of center stage in this process. He's still going to be working very closely with Josh Harris. But I think now that Adam Peters is here, they've got their GM. I think that he's going to take a more center stage approach where he's the leading voice in the search for the head coach. That doesn't mean that the advisory committee isn't still going to be a part of the interview process. They still may be a part of that process. I wouldn't be shocked if they were. But it's going to be Adam Peters kind of spearheading this search, if that makes sense. Joe Rockhead, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, with Peters the GM, when's the Marty party over? Don't know. I would assume that in the next few weeks to a month, we'll get all of that stuff sorted out and we'll have everything kind of crystallized. But I think the next order of business is for him to get settled, him being Adam Peters, get settled in, kind of get situated. Then you start to make those decisions. Obviously, the next biggest decision that they're going to make is going to be finding a head coach. And then once you get that head coach and he fills out his staff, that's when you can start internally looking around and making decisions, because that head coach that you hire is going to be able to pick from the staff that is currently there and say, hey, I want to keep this guy, I want to keep that guy, or hey, just get rid of all of them. I got guys in mind for all these positions. I don't want none of them. Then you can just move on from them, right? But you want to give that guy an opportunity first to see if any of the holdovers have done a really good job and he feels like, hey, I think that we've seen a lot of growth out of this particular position, like what they're doing, and I don't have anybody in mind for that job. I think that guy's doing a really good job. Just leave him there, right? So we'll see. As far as the Marty party, I already told you, I think Marty or Martin Mayhew is going to be back. I made that abundantly clear. I think Adam Peters has a working relationship with Martin Mayhew. I can see him remaining here. I'll be shocked if he's not here. Let me just say it that way. Just so y'all know how adamant I am that I think Martin Mayhew will remain here in some capacity. I don't know what his title will be. He'll be here in some capacity, I believe. I'll be shocked if he's not. Rail Goated, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Rail Goated writes, do you see a way we make the offs year one with Adam Peters? Sure. There's always a path in the NFL. I told you this league is set up for parity. Absolutely, there's a way you can make the playoffs in year one. The likelihood is you won't, but all you got to do, hit a home run with the head coach, hit a home run with the quarterback, and the defensive coordinator, whomever you hire, hit a home run in the draft, right? And you don't have to necessarily kill it with every single pick, but the guys that you bring in are impactful. You get a couple of contributors in free agency that have to come in, because, again, we don't have a single defensive end that is capable of starting. Like, I don't know about you. we can't start KJ Henry next year. That's not okay. He can be on the roster. He can be a backup that comes off the bench. I'm cool with that. He can't start for us, though. Like, that's not okay. Andrew Wiley can't start for us at right tackle. That's not okay. Like, there's certain things that are non-negotiables. So you got to find guys to fill those roles, right? Whether that guy's already on the roster or he's free agent that's not here right now or in the draft, or you got to go get him, whatever, figure it out. But you're going to need to hit at multiple levels, starting with the GM, then the head coach, then the offensive and staff, defensive staff, but specifically if you go offensive-minded coach, you got to hit on the defensive coordinator. You go defensive-minded coach, you got to hit on the offensive coordinator. So all these things have to fall into place. Then you got to hit on the draft. And then you got to hit in free agency and have some of these guys, because again, you got 22 starters between offense and defense. I'm telling you right now, you might have 6 dudes that started for us last year start this next year. 6. Because I still expect Jonathan Allen to be traded. So Deron Payne will be the only starter from the defensive line last year. I don't know if either one of the linebackers are starting. Maybe Jamie Davis, right? He's going into the last year of his deal. So, and they got the option. You got to make a decision on him with the 5th-year option. I'm pretty sure they're going to decline that. And so he'll be in his last year of his deal, right? So probably Jamie Davis starts. Kendall Fuller's a free agent. I don't think he's going to be back. I would like him back, but I don't think he's going to be back. Then Forbes will probably be a starter next year, I would assume. You never know. I'd be shocked if they don't find a way to replace Juice and have him just be depth next year by bringing in some, like, he ain't playing nickel. I'll tell you that right now. He ain't playing nickel for us this year. He'll be a backup boundary corner if they have it their way. So, and then, well, Cam Curl if he's back, and then I think Quan Martin. But can't assume Cam Curl's back. Quan Martin, that's 4 dudes that's started at some point last year. And then you go to the offensive side. Cosme, that's 5. Brian Robinson Jr., that's 6. Terry, that's 7. Jahan, that's 8. I can't vouch for anybody else on the offensive line. I can't vouch for any other skill position players. That's it. 8 out of the 22. And they're not, all 8 of them aren't even guarantees, right? So it's going to be a lot of turnover is what I'm trying to tell you. It's going to look a lot different. You're going to have to hit on a lot of guys in 1 year. Again, the Texans did what they did, but remember, that was a 3-year process. Their GM got here 2 years prior to them getting their hands on D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud. So they were already building towards that. They had already gotten Laramie Tunzel at left tackle. They had already put pieces around, on the roster. Not saying that all of them, but they already had Nico Collins. He was already cooking, right? He was already in the oven, and then he finally took off when he finally got a quarterback. Like, these are the things that you got to already have. We got some of those pieces. We don't have all those pieces. So, again, they had already drafted the cornerback from LSU. They had already drafted the safety from Baylor. They had already done a number of things. They'd already went out in free agency and gotten, the defensive tackle from Dallas. They had already drafted Jonathan Grenard. Like, all this stuff was sitting there waiting for CJ Stroud to come in and do what he did. And then they just added a few 1-year deals, right? They added Dalton Schultz, and they drafted Tank Dell, and they brought in Noah Brown. Like, they filled in some of the gaps, but a lot of that stuff was already there. So you don't have to hit on a lot of shit. It's not impossible. It's just highly unlikely. It's not impossible, though. King of the Bluegrass starts with the decisions that are being made now, though. GM, head coach, staff, and then we'll get to the players. But it starts there first. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, excuse me, he was hired as the head coach of the Bears from 15 to 17. I forgot about that. That's right. He was there prior to Matt Nagy. That is correct. Then he worked senior defensive assistant for the Indianapolis Colts in 22 and hired by the Lions in 23. So he was out of the league for 6 seasons. 18, 19, 20, 21. So 5 seasons, excuse me. He was out of the league for 5 seasons from 18 essentially to 2022. Then he got some work with Indianapolis, and then the Lions hired him in the same capacity. Ain't no way that guy can be my defensive coordinator. Sorry. Ain't no way. Now you could bring him here in a similar capacity and have him be a special assistant to the defensive coordinator. Knock yourself out. Never hurt to have another set of eyes. But him being no. Thank you for that information. I totally forgot about him coaching in Chicago. Totally forgot about that little stint there. It did not work in Chicago, and he got fired. Joe Rockhead, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, going to revisit the Reign of Terror series to better appreciate Peters. I would beseech any skeptics to do the same. Thanks for that, Louie. I probably will add 2023 to close out that series, the Reign of Terror. Because even though technically Snyder was not the owner in 2023, it was the first year of Josh Harris and the rest of his group. Snyder impacted the offseason. We couldn't move the way that we wanted to. The funds were tied up. Assets were frozen. Shit was still janky. And he still left behind residue. Rivera and Marty and et cetera and et cetera. And so 2023 may prompt me to do one final episode. But if not, it's all there. Right? If you haven't checked out the Reign of Terror series that I did last offseason, it was by most accounts critically acclaimed. I didn't say that. That's what I was told. But if you haven't checked it out, check it out. But anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of the Command Post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. Adam Peters' debut went off without a hitch. Everything kind of went according to plan. Didn't think he was going to say anything that was going to stick out necessarily. Just really wanted to know why us, and he made it abundantly clear that essentially this was the best opportunity available this year, and he was confident that this was the job that this ownership group, which you couldn't say in the past 25 years, this ownership group, the vision that they have for what this team means to this community in this area, and revitalizing that, rekindling that, bringing that back, making that something that this area can be proud of again. This team is important to everybody. As Harris loves to say, they're stewards of the fan base, right? This area, like this is something that they are doing to bring joy and a sense of pride back to the area that has been lacking for the last quarter of a century. And everybody knows what kind of a fan base this is. We want this fan base to be reignited again. But it's going to take winning, sustained winning, to bring back a lot of fans who are just sick and tired of being sick and tired. So this is the first step. In that process, next step is the head coach, and then we go from there. But looking forward to it. Feels really good to know that the outside perception of Washington is rapidly changing right before our very eyes. That's half the battle. It's half the battle. Anyway, I digress. Y'all get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll come back. We'll do this again live on Thursday night. In the meantime, you'll get a podcast, all that good stuff, as we try to get back to some level of normalcy on my end. It's nasty weather out here, though. We got some snow yesterday. They talking about more snow at the end of the week. The kids had to stay home, which is why, all of my activities kind of got put on hold today because the kids were home, all of them. My son is out of school again. The oldest is out of school again tomorrow, but he's not a problem. It's the two little ones. It's the twins. They kick ass. All right. Ain't no videos going down with their asses home. So taking their little asses to daycare tomorrow. And hopefully I'll be able to get some work in. But we'll see. Anyway, I digress. Y'all enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll see you guys next time. Y'all know what it is. God bless. Good night.